following is a production of Cary TV, the Town of Cary's government access channel.
Call to order the June 27th meeting of the Cary Town Council, and at this time I'd like to recognize Council Member Yerha to provide our ceremonial opening. Mr. Yerha.
Thank you, Mayor. Exactly 1 week from today is the 4th of July, the 237th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. 56 people signed that declaration. 3 of them were from North Carolina, represented North Carolina. Contrary to popular belief, Jack was not one of those 3.
You knew it was coming.
3 of them were my close friends.
But it's interesting that none of them were natives of North Carolina. 2 of them actually came from the Northeast, which proves the fact that it is not a modern-day Cary phenomenon. People were moving here from there 200 years ago. There was Joseph Hewis, who came from the great state of New Jersey. He moved down to Edenton, North Carolina. William Hooper was from Massachusetts, and he moved to Wilmington, North Carolina. In fact, William Hooper was so busy taking to the care of the affairs in very busy Wilmington 237 years ago that he missed the meeting up in Philadelphia on the 4th of July, and he actually didn't sign the Declaration until a month after the fact. And then there was John Penn, who was from Virginia, who found land a little bit cheaper down across the colony line. It wasn't a state line in those days, and he moved to Granville County and lived there the rest of his life. But what they all had in common, that more important than where they originally were born, was their belief in freedom. And they were willing to stick their neck out and risk a lot by signing that declaration. They were willing to fight for freedom, just as hundreds of thousands of men and women have done since, risking their lives in military service to preserve that freedom that was won for us back on July 4th, 1776. In fact, we owe our comfortable lives here in Cary today to those hundreds of thousands of men and women, as well as to Hughes, Hooper, and Penn. Although they're not household names today, Thomas Paine is. And he said, "Those who expect to reap the benefits of freedom must undergo the fatigue of supporting it." It's kind of like an old-fashioned version of ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Freedom needs supporting. It needs giving back. So as the 4th approaches, I would ask that we all consider ways that we can do that. Looking around this room, I think most of us have figured out at least one small way we can do that and give back to our country or our community. But I think there's even more. Even though there's no declaration for us to sign, even there's no enemy in front of us to fight. So I think we can start right now by supporting that freedom by all joining in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Yerha. We're now at agenda item A3. It's the adoption of our agenda, and I would entertain a motion to do so.
So moved.
There's a motion.
Second.
And a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. That takes us to item B, which is the consent agenda portion of tonight's meeting. For the benefit of those people watching our meeting on TV, I'll take a moment to read consent agenda items. Keep in mind that one vote approves all of these items. Item 1, approval of the minutes. Item 2, adopting the tax report. Item 3, adopting a resolution authorizing the counties to collect Cary's property taxes. Item 4, approving staff's request to provide no comments on a variance request to the Swift Creek Land Management Plan. Item 5, calling for an annexation public hearing. And item 6, ratifying the strings of lights ordinance amendment we adopted at our last meeting. Would a council member like any of these items pulled for discussion?
I would like to move the ratifying the string of lights ordinance amendment.
Okay, we're pulling the ratifying, and we'll take that under old business at the end of the meeting. Any other items to be pulled for discussion? Okay, all in favor of the consent agenda items minus the ratifying strings of lights, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We now move to recognitions, reports, and presentations. That's item C. And our first item, I would like to invite Heather Stark of the Audubon Society of North Carolina and town staff member Mark Johns to the podium for our first presentation.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Well, it's an honor to be here representing Audubon, North Carolina. The National Audubon Society has more than 1 million members and supporters, offices in 23 states, and a presence in all 50 states through our 450 chapters, nature centers, sanctuaries, education, and science programs. Audubon, North Carolina, the state program, works on behalf of more than 14,000 members and supporters in 10 chapters across the state, just like Wake Audubon here in Cary. Audubon's mission is to conserve and restore natural ecosystems, focusing on birds and other wildlife, their habitats, for the benefit of humanity and the Earth's biological diversity. We carry out this mission through a network of 96 important bird areas here in North Carolina, coastal sanctuaries all along the coast, where we protect an average of 35% of the state's water birds every year in nesting colonies. It's happening right now if you go down to the coast. We work with our partners and communities across the state to protect our birds and their habitats from the mountains to the coast. So in the mountains, we work with private landowners to manage their farms and their ranches for the benefit of birds. On the coast, we mostly deal with sanctuaries and nesting colonies of birds and protect those. And then urban areas, we work with different cities, communities, to basically make their communities better for birds, so bird-friendly communities, and Mark's doing a lot of that here in Cary. But Audubon has a long history of deploying wardens to protect important nesting areas and habitats for birds. Some of these wardens you may have heard of in Florida and North Carolina and other places all over the country have even died in the name of this protection. We salute these wardens every day for what they have done and what they've given for birds conservation. And Audubon, North Carolina gives an award every year to someone that exemplifies the spirits of those Audubon wardens. So Mark, this year we salute Mark Johns as our honorary warden. And I want to tell you just a few words about what Mark did to get this award. Mark took over management of what's called North Carolina Partners in Flight. And what that is a group of organizations working for bird conservation. And when he took over Partners in Flight, he was the driving force in getting bird researchers in North Carolina to not just think about working together and sharing their work, but he actually forced us to do that. In his gentle and organized way, he often set meetings 3 years in advance, so you couldn't say no. And he's absolutely the perfect person for that role, pulling everyone together, sharing our knowledge, sharing his knowledge, and everything that he was doing to connect grad students and researchers with the managers and practitioners of the agencies to get good work done on the ground. He worked very hard for the creation of the North Carolina Birding Trail that exists today. You all should go check it out if you haven't yet. And when he stepped down in those roles to pursue his work at Hemlock Bluffs here in Cary, he left a legacy that continues today. He continues to serve as an inspiration for all of us. He lives the mantra that all conservation is local. His important groundwork for making good habitat and educating children and the public on how that works is how bird conservation works today. And Mark exemplifies the commitment to stewardship that makes him an ideal honorary warden. So the National Audubon Society chose him this year for that award.
Wow.
First of all, I'd like to certainly thank Audubon, North Carolina, for recognizing the valuable bird conservation and education work that goes on at Hemlock Bluffs Nature Preserve. We're very proud of it there. And certainly I want to thank the Town Council, and I've lived in Cary for many years, for the long-term support of Hemlock Bluffs. Without you, we couldn't do the things we do. We couldn't reach the thousands of people we do every year with the hundreds of nature programs. And right now, the citizens are asking for more environmental education opportunities. The Parks and Recreation Cultural Resource Master Plan survey bears this out. And we'd like to continue to have your support and continue to be able to do those things for them for many years to come. Thank you.
Ms. Stark, thank you so much for being here and presenting that award. And of course, Mr. Johns, we're very proud of you and all the work that you do. I want to say keep up the good work for the town of Cary. Very proud of you. Thank you. We'll now move to our next item. Mr. Frantz will be presenting the Parks and Recreation Month proclamation.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to ask Ms. Kay Streffolino, Phil Shepard, and Robert Bush to please join me at the podium. Hey, strangers. How you doing? Good to see you guys. I'm sure you all know who these people are, familiar faces around Town Hall, but for those of you watching on TV who may not know, or those in the audience, this is Ms. Kay Streffolino. She's the Vice Chair of the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Advisory Board, and I believe Cary's first ever Hometown Spirit Award winner. Mr. Robert Bush, who also chairs the Citizen Advisory Committee for Greenways for the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Advisory Board, and Mr. Phil Shepard, who also chairs the Cultural Arts Citizen Advisory Group for the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Advisory Board. It's got a long title. As a liaison for the board, it's my pleasure to read the proclamation recognizing July as Parks Recreation Month in the town of Cary. Whereas the mission of Cary Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Department is to serve, educate, and enhance the quality of life for the citizens of Cary, and whereas Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources facilities foster a variety of programs and activities excuse me, that are inclusive for all participants, contribute to a healthier community, connect children with nature, provide outdoor sports play, and recognizes the value of the arts. And whereas the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Department is dedicated to providing Cary citizens a variety of enjoyable and cost-effective recreation, sports, environmental, historical, and cultural arts programs and services. And whereas Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resource programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. Additionally, parks, open space, and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. And whereas the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Department acquires, develops, beautifies, conserves, and maintains a system of parks, greenways, and recreation facilities that will assure quality leisure opportunities for all Cary residents. The Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Department also recognizes and honors the vital contributions of volunteers to park and recreation programs, activities, and events. Now, therefore, I, Don Frantz, on behalf of Harold Weinbrecht Jr., Mayor of the Town of Cary, and the entire Cary Town Council, do hereby proclaim July 2013 as Parks and Recreation Month in Cary, and I encourage all Cary citizens and visitors to enjoy using the parks, trails, programs, and special places that enhance the quality of life in our community. Proclaim this 27th day of June 2013. Would you like to say a few words?
Hi. For anyone that doesn't know, Cary has 70 miles of greenways, almost 30 parks, several major nationally recognized award-winning athletic and performance facilities, public art incorporated into many of those venues, and public art all over town for the residents to enjoy. We've got a fantastic, dedicated, hardworking Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources staff who collaborate with departments townwide in many, many of the events, programs, things that are planned, especially the Public Works Department, who actually is involved in just about every component of the Parks Department. And as a resident of Cary for over 40 years, when the population was 9,000 and change, I just want to thank everybody seated at the table this evening, our past mayors, council members, everyone involved who had the dedication and the vision to grow Cary into the fantastic, vibrant, healthy, green, entertaining, beautiful community that is today. Thank you.
But Kay, you left off one thing. Cary is so good because of the citizens in Cary. And this particular board, with these three people, Kay, Robert, and Bill, that I can't remember when I met them, that's how long I've known you, have made a huge difference. Your board put in 1,700 hours last year in town events. That's huge, and that makes Cary one of the greatest places. Thank you, all three of you, for what you do, and thank your board for all that you do. God bless you all. We now move to our third item, and that's the town manager's operational update. Mr. Shiver.
Thank you, Mayor. I would first like to call on Stacy Teachy, our senior budget and management analyst in our budget department, to make the first portion of the presentation on our general fund margin estimate.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, we'd like to share with you our most recent estimate of year-end general fund operating margin. You'll recall that estimated general fund operating margin is determined by taking our total estimated general fund revenues. Oh no. Oh no. Let's get back to where we need to be. How does that sound? And one more slide. There we go. Should just go down, correct? There we go. Sorry about that. By taking our general fund revenues and subtracting our estimated general fund expenses from that figure. And with that, you'll arrive at your operating margin. And the chart you're going to see here shortly, the black bars are going to represent estimated margin growth, or areas where estimated revenues exceeded our budgeted amounts. The red bars you're going to see are going to represent margin decline, or the amount of margin that was utilized during the fiscal year. We began FY 2013 with a balanced budget with no assumed year-end operating margin. Bars 2 through 10, and I'll roll through those quickly here for you, on our graph represent areas where revenue receipts are estimated to exceed budgeted amounts. In total, this comes to about $3.7 million in additional FY 2013 revenue. Bars 11 through 13 represent mid-year operating margin appropriations of approximately $1.8 million for contracted services, which it's an area that's difficult to plan for, and it's not unusual to determine during the course of the year that consultant services are needed beyond what was originally budgeted. We wrap up with the blue bar, which represents our estimated FY 2013 year-end margin, or funds that will fall to fund balance, of about $1.86 million. For comparative purposes, this equates to about 1.5% of the total FY 2013 budget. This concludes my presentation this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, I'll turn it back to Mr. Shiver for further comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. I appreciate that report, and I would like to remind our audience, Cary citizens, as well as the council, that the general fund margin is but one snapshot of a piece of our budget. As you well know, this does not cover the expenditure piece. It focuses only on margin, looking at our estimated, comparing what we have received, what council has appropriated mid-year compared to our adopted budget. Council knows that at the end of our fiscal year, we begin an audit report, which we'll get into the other side of the ledger with our expenditures, and the difference between the revenues and expenditures after everything has been accounted for will yield a figure that will, what we generally say, falls into fund balance, and that typically is a much larger figure because our expenditure levels are typically much lower than what council originally authorizes for us to expend. So just wanted to make that clarification with what we present at the financial update. And Mayor, there are two other things that I would like to mention in addition to that report. Very briefly, following up on what I thought was a very successful dedication of Fire Station number 8, which was very well attended by, what I really enjoyed seeing was a lot of members of the community out there, the public, and families that were there visiting the fire station. A significant part of the fire station was the fact that it is our first built from the ground energy efficient building. So I wanted to let council know that the Cary Fire Department has won the top spot in the EPA Energy Star National Building Competition for 2012 in the fire police building category, where we had a complete energy reduction of a total of 15%. So that did not include our new building, but things that we have done to retrofit and to look at other things, and we were able to achieve that record. So that's quite an achievement, I think, and I believe council and our citizens should be, hopefully should be aware of that. Would also like to note that we are continuing to collect storm debris from a severe thunderstorm that occurred on June the 13th. Many folks in town may not realize there were some, as usually happens in summer storms, your parts of the town are hit worse than others. My particular neighborhood that I lived in was not that severely hit, but other areas were very much. So we've had quite a bit of debris collection to do throughout the city. We are continuing to do that. And we hope to have most of the large debris collection that is currently at the curb finished by this Friday. So I would ask that if anyone continues to have debris, in particular large trees or other significant debris, that from this point forward, after Friday, it's probably most effective to pick that up by calling Public Works for a special collection, and we'll be happy to collect those debris. And Mayor, with that, that completes my report.
Okay, very good.
Mayor, may I interrupt for a moment?
Yes.
Ms. Rowland brought to my attention that council didn't take the step of formally approving the consent agenda, and if I could suggest that we do that.
It's probably a good idea. How did I miss that? I could have sworn we did. Okay.
I thought we did too.
We voted, I thought, to
approve the
Nobody made a
agenda, but not
motion.
specifically the consent.
You need a formal motion. I move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. Have the experts catching our mistakes. Thank you. We'll now move to our next item, which is Public Speaks Out. Our next two agenda items, Public Speaks Out and Public Hearings, have instructions for how to speak at these. That's on the printed agenda. And if you'd like to speak at either Public Speaks Out or Public Hearings, I would ask that you take a seat in the first two rows to my right that are marked as reserved, and fill out the card at the seats. Public Speaks Out, which will start in a moment. Speakers have 3 minutes for their comments, and speakers may speak on any topic as long as it's not a public hearing. You'll have, like I said, 3 minutes, and you'll be speaking at the podium to my right, to your left, and there's a timer on that podium. The timer will be green for the first 2.5 minutes, yellow for the last 30 seconds, and at the end of 3 minutes, it will flash red, and I'll have to interrupt you and tell you to conclude your comments. And I thank you in advance to adhering to the guidelines we've set forth. And having said all of that, I would like to invite the first Public Speaks Out speaker forward.
My name is Stan Levine. I come to you as a citizen of Cary. I have about 40 years or so experience in federal, state, and local governments and public service. But that does not affect what I'm saying here right now. What I'm talking about are the results, some of the results of the technology task force. I understand, since I've worked in budgets, with items as low as 1,000 and as much as 100 billion. I understand that the budget is pretty well fixed, and I'm not asking for any change to the budget. But within the budget, I'm asking for you to consider over the next year supporting some of the recommendations. And the two that I would like to talk to and bring your attention to: support open government. Mainly open information. Open information provides information that citizens would like or need in a form that they can easily digest. That's very difficult because not everybody is the same. I know technology. I've worked in it my whole life almost. My wife is almost exactly the opposite. So we look for things that meet the entire range of people. The first door to that is the website. Any improvements to the website, any way of making it simpler, easier to understand, supporting people who want detailed information, very complex, etc., like maybe myself, or someone who just wants to find when an event is going on, to be able to get to it quickly and easily. I know that the technology area of the budget has increased. There is extra manpower or person power, as the case may be, available. And I'm sure there are many people who will volunteer to support that. I think you'll find that once you have that information available and open, that there will be people who use it, and you'll get a lot of support from it, both volunteer and people who will develop things. The second, of course, is open data, and that's the one that counts pretty much. Once you have data available for contractors and for other people to use, you'll probably find a lot of people who will volunteer to write programs that will do things for you, and the benefit, increased efficiency. You'll probably, in the beginning, get a lot more questions from citizens, but in the end, you will probably get many fewer questions because they will easily find the information on the website. So I just ask that you think about that and possibly look for ways. I know that the Information Services Advisory Board will probably support any increase in that or any benefit from that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name's Claudia Dean. I've lived in Cary for 25 years. And tonight I'd like to talk about including all information in meeting minutes. in March and April of this year, I attended the Zoning Board of Adjustment meetings. At the March 5th meeting, there were many citizens who attended the public hearing with the intention of speaking. There were so many, in fact, that we had to get quite neighborly around the Bible in order to be sworn in regarding our testimony. There is no mention of the swearing in of residents in the meeting minutes. Since residents were there to speak, there should be some record in the meeting minutes indicating the swearing in of citizens for future reference. When events at a meeting occur that negate the public's right to speak, there should be some indication that an approximate number of people were there sworn in to speak to get an accurate record of the meeting, even though the events that occurred during the meeting prohibited the public from speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker for public speaks out, please.
My name is Mark Gale. I'd like to thank the council and the mayor for the opportunity. And really, I just came to express my gratitude. I'm from Surrey Point, and we were at the previous meeting and expressed our concerns about the interconnections that are planned that would adversely impact our neighborhoods. And I appreciate the fact that our voice was heard. I'd like to thank Councilman Smith and Councilwoman Bush. They sponsored the opportunity to instruct the planning board to investigate removing those plans from their plans. And so I'm just expressing my gratitude in that you would listen to us. And that's really all I have to say.
Thank you. Next speaker for public speaks out.
Here are some maps. This is rather what we're speaking about. I appreciate it. If folks could have a copy. Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to address you all. Mark Hale is my neighbor. I'm Bob Hyman. I live on Bamberg Lane in the Surrey Point subdivision where I built my house almost 30 years ago. I'd like to start by thanking Councilwoman Bush and Councilman Smith for co-sponsoring the agenda item, consideration of a request to direct staff to investigate removing the interconnections between Orchard Knoll, Bamberg Lane, and Lawdraker Road, as well as the resulting collector streets from the current Cary transportation plan. This is agenda G.1 on the agenda for tonight's Town Council meeting. Thank you, both of you. My neighbors and I in the Surrey Point and Orchard Knoll subdivisions would appreciate everyone's support for this agenda. The item was put on the agenda as a result of the petition that my neighbors and I presented to you at the Cary Town Council meeting on June 13th. Cary abandoned plans to annex these subdivisions, and my neighbors and I concur. We don't want to be annexed. As per Cary policies, the transportation plan interconnections and collector streets would actually not be implemented unless these low-density subdivisions were to be redeveloped, and that will not happen for many decades, if at all. I'm not going anywhere. However, these transportation plan features discourage selling any of these houses because buyers would be spooked by the impact of bringing in heavy traffic and widening our residential streets. Buyers are not likely to pay attention to the nuanced explanations as to why the street alterations will not be implemented in our subdivisions. After all, the changes are shown in the transportation plan. And the right-of-ways shown in these transportation plan features prevent my neighbor on the cul-de-sac where the interconnections would break into Bamberg Lane from extending his house. And yes, he'd like to. They would prevent the Pierce family from building utility buildings where the interconnections go through their farm, which, by the way, also go through some wetland, a stream, some forest. If they were actually implemented, there'd be some environmental havoc, I think. By the way,
Would the right-of-way prevent us from repaving our aging private residential streets? Wake County is not going to do it for us. We'll have to raise funds in our community to do it. We'd like to begin those discussions, but the right-of-way goes through them. So the current Cary Comprehensive Transportation Plan includes plans to alter residential streets in these two subdivisions that are not part of Cary. Although these plans will not be implemented, they would obstruct homeowners' ability to either improve or sell their property. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker for Public Speaks Out. Anyone else for Public Speaks Out? Seeing no one, I'll close Public Speaks Out and we'll move to public hearings. We're at item E1, it's the Silverton Plan Development Request. Our public hearing pertains to the rezoning 12 REZ 30. Ms. Brannon of our staff will present the staff's presentation. We're going to hear the Planning and Zoning Board's recommendation, and then we're going to allow the applicant to present the request. The staff's presentation will include information on the waiver request for the road requirement improvements along Adcock Road. Following these presentations, I'm going to open up the public hearing, and speakers will have 5 minutes to voice their comments. The council may take action this evening. There is a valid protest petition on the rezoning, and what that means, it requires 6 out of 7 of us to vote for the rezoning for it to be approved. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Brannon for the staff report.
Thank you. Good evening. I'd first like to point out that this request for an amendment to the Silverton Plan Development District and an associated preliminary development plan, the applicant did request at one point in time that this case be postponed as they were still trying to work on some concerns from the neighbors. We advised the applicant that the case had already been scheduled and the public hearing had been advertised, therefore it needed to go forward. And the applicant's going to speak to you a little bit further about that during the public hearing. But as I stated, this is a request for a PDD amendment for the Silverton PDD, and it is in a mixed-use overlay district. Therefore, there is an associated preliminary development plan. The subject property is located at the intersection of Northwest Cary Parkway and Evans Road. Zoomed in photograph shows the existing conditions. The property is vacant and wooded. Cary's land use plan designation for the property is commercial, and the property is located within the Silverton mixed-use overlay district. The existing zoning is PDD, Planned Development District, and as indicated with the arrow, this parcel was identified as Parcel I and was labeled as a shopping center or designated for commercial activity. The applicant is proposing to amend that PDD to allow multifamily residential as a permitted use, and therefore there is an associated preliminary development plan, which staff has reviewed, provided comments back to the applicant. There have been numerous changes, and this was presented to the Planning and Zoning Board. A plan summary shows that there are 216 attached residential multifamily units, open space provided, 15,700 square feet for clubhouse and recreation, and then 3,895 square feet of separate gathering space. Here's a color illustration of the preliminary development plan, which shows the layout of the buildings and the roads. The level of detail has not been assessed yet in terms of precise road profiles or utilities, but the massing, the placement of the buildings, the open space and buffers where the recreation site, all of these become conditions of the preliminary development plan. Here's a close-up illustration to show the clubhouse proposed with active recreation and then one of the community gathering spaces centrally located. The applicant has proposed a reduction to land development ordinance standards, which is a permitted request as part of this process, to provide a 30-foot streetscape along Evans Road and Cary Parkway. This is consistent with what was in the original planned development district when the parcel was zoned for commercial. The applicant is also proposing a 50-foot streetscape along Windfair Drive. The applicant provided renderings to staff, and these were presented to adjacent property owners. They incorporated these into specific zoning conditions in regard to the building height, providing 50% masonry on the buildings. There is a stream buffer according to Cary's GIS maps, but field determination would be required at the time of site plan review. Cary's Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Department did not identify any issues with the proposed plan. A recreation fee would be required. Cary's transportation plan identifies Northwest Cary Parkway and Evans Road as major thoroughfares and Windfair Drive as a collector road. There was a traffic impact analysis conducted. The results of that study are in your staff report. It did call for some mitigations pertaining to access points on the property, and the applicant has agreed to those mitigations. Cary's transportation plan and transit plan does show a future C-Tran route along Northwest Cary Parkway, and the applicant has proposed an easement on the property. The design of that would not be determined until the route is established. In your staff report and presented here is an overview of the uses existing, proposed, and then the capacity of remaining land in the mixed-use overlay district. In staff's review of the plan, we found that it was in keeping with a number of the design principles of the mixed-use overlay district in terms of the open space arrangement, the buffers. We would like to point out, staff's concern was that there was a loss of the commercial component in the mixed-use overlay district. We would like to point out, though, that there is still 25.5 vacant acres if this property were to be approved with the current use that's currently designated for office and institutional. Property owners within 400 feet of the subject property were notified by mail of the public hearing. The property was posted and advertised. As you stated, Mayor, there is a valid protest, so this would require a supermajority vote for approval. The area shown in yellow is the subject area that constitutes a valid protest, and the areas in blue show property that is either located outside the buffer area or did not have the appropriate signatures or came in after deadline and therefore would not be valid. Citizens' concerns pertain to density, the transition between uses. In some cases, citizens spelled out by transition they wanted either larger buffers or an alternate use, stormwater management, traffic, and the loss of commercial use. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended the request for denial by a vote of 6-3. At this time, I'll call on the Planning and Zoning Board Chair to speak to their concerns, and then when we open the public hearing, the applicant will speak.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. As you've heard, we recommended denial with a vote of 6-3. Our reasons really centered around a couple of core issues. One was the density was very high, and transition of density from single-family residential, low density, to high-density multifamily seemed to be inappropriate. We think that there just could have been a better transition of uses. We frankly had some concerns about the stormwater issues because of the amount of impervious surface. We heard from citizens that there was concern about property value impact, particularly having multifamily residential so close to single-family residential. We had some concerns about traffic impacts, although the traffic study indicated that mitigations were available. And so that was not a gating variable for us. And some of us felt that commercial would perhaps have been, at least some commercial would have been better in this particular location.
Thank you, Mr. Schwabs. So if staff's completed their report, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing and invite the applicant forward.
Thank you, Deborah. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Jason Barron here on behalf of the applicant and the property owner, Singh Development. This will probably be the shortest presentation that I ever make to you all. at least knock on wood, that's the case. As was alluded to, we have requested that this case be sent back to the Planning and Zoning Board and removed from you all's agenda. We understand it can't be removed from the agenda because it has been scheduled for a public hearing. On Monday, we were notified of the valid statutory protest petition. The owner would like an opportunity, would like time to be able to work with the folks who have submitted these petitions in an effort to alleviate the concerns that they've identified in the petitions that have been submitted. With that said, we have our team here, and we're available to answer any questions that you all have, but we respectfully request that this case be sent back to Planning and Zoning so we can work with the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll probably have questions after the public hearing is closed. This time, I would like to continue with the public hearing and invite the first speaker forward.
Greetings, Council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak before you. I'm here to encourage you.
Ms. Adams, could you give us your
Oh,
name
I'm
for the record?
sorry. My name is Elizabeth Adams. I live at 103 Larkspur Lane.
Thank you.
And in the Silverton PDD. And I would encourage you to either send this back to Planning and Zoning so the applicant continue to work with neighbors, or to deny the proposed development. So I feel that this development is too intense, and it does not provide an adequate transition to our existing single-family homes. I'm especially concerned about the safety of children in our neighborhood. We have a large pool with a high membership, and we all participate each summer in swim team. And as you know, in living in Cary, swim teams host other teams. People are parked all over the streets. Kids are trying to get quickly to the pool, and it's just a big concern to have additional road access on Windfair, and also have a high amount of traffic exiting and entering on Windfair from the proposed development. I feel like the plan also doesn't meet some of the land development ordinances that we currently have, and I'm really not clear whether the process that's currently used allows staff to fully evaluate all those. One example is the building height currently exceeds, the proposed building heights currently exceed the maximum height that's specified in our LDO. He's requested reduction of streetscape buffers. I feel that if families are going to be living in these high-density homes, they should be protected from air pollution from the high volumes of traffic that go by. And those streetscape buffers are especially important for reducing the pollutant impacts to children that live in those neighborhoods. And the other item that I would really encourage the developer to do is to use as much green infrastructure instead of piping all the stormwater to the end of the pipe, which is going to just get dumped into Silverton Lake, causing additional flooding for the homes that are along New Rail and Stromer. The more that he can do to use low-impact development and lead for neighborhood development type design standards to reduce stormwater impacts on neighbors downstream, I think would be a real win for the town. So I thank you for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Next speaker for this public hearing, please.
Hello, my name is Jeff Cox. I had sent the council an email a couple days ago and was under the impression that we weren't going to be having a public hearing tonight, so I don't have any real prepared remarks. I want to speak to a number of issues, but essentially just kind of gripe about this being too dense of a space. Over the years, Singh has put forth a number of plans. 2007, 153 apartments, 40,000 square foot of office. 2008, 3.71 acres, AKA the gas station. 2010, 184 apartments, 45,000 square foot of retail and office, and today 216 apartments. Every year that they brought this forth, people have griped about this being too intense of a development, and every year it just seems to increase in scale. So I'm not sure exactly why they were surprised that they were getting valid protest petitions. Another issue is right now there are just over 1,000 apartments along the Cary Parkway corridor between Harrison Avenue and 54 Chapel Hill Road. There's another 200 plus or minus townhomes in that same area. You add this in, then we're upwards of 1,500 multifamily housing along that corridor, and I'm just concerned that that area is just being overbuilt with apartments, given the fact that this is the only commercial space in that area, basically from Maynard all the way down Evans Road to Aviation. This is pretty much the only commercial property that could be built with any sort of retail development. And then other than the Lowe's right at the corner of Maynard, and then along Cary Parkway from Harrison to 54, other than some retail right down by 54 in Morrisville. This is really the only retail that could potentially be built, and we're concerned that if you eliminate this, that there's really not going to be another opportunity. Ms. Grannon spoke to the 25.5 acres just across the street from the subject property, but right now that's office and institutional. Unless somebody wants to talk them into converting it over to commercial, I'd hate to give up the last piece of commercial within the Silverton PDD to just put in essentially a bunch of apartments. And then that's, I think, basically all I'd like to talk to you about today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Anyone else for this public hearing?
Good evening. My name is Brian Blackmore. I live at 113 Windfair Drive. This development will literally become part of my front yard, so how it's developed is obviously very important to me and my family. I'd just like to say I support sending this back to planning and zoning, that their initial findings, as reported earlier, is something I would agree with, that it's quite an abrupt transition from single family to very high density. What ultimately I would like to see when this is developed, and I do support the development of it, is something less dense, more multi-use, and we would like to see a commercial element out on the main roads. I'm reminded of something, the development near Davis and High House with the townhouses in the back and the retail out towards the main road. If there was something similar to that, I think that would really add value to our neighborhood and be more in line with potentially what was originally proposed for this this parcel when it was originally zoned. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilman. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Safri Liao. I am one of the owners at 100 Pebble Ridge Farms Court. It's our driveway is the one that backs out into the access one for this development, what was planned. First, thank you so much for the public hearing. I know I mean, to me, it's just only in this nation that, you know, of the nations that I've been to, that we are able to speak as a citizen, and where the councilman and the mayor is here to serve the people. I'm so thankful of that. First, I do need to say that I know that Singh has proposed many excellent work. It seems, you know, everything looks really high class and all, and they have sought to meet with us neighbors. However, it seems like there has been problems in understanding issues that we neighbors consider as important. And their proposal for more than 11 homes per acre in this very high density proposal is just directly across the street from Windfair, where there are 2 to 3 homes per acre. So that's the drastic, the drastic difference in density. Part of what the Planning and Zoning Board had noted, that a better transition would help with traffic, would help with property values, would help with the current Silverton families being able to appreciate the new neighbors. We do think that that area, it will be developed, it will be great, but I think something can be worked out where the neighbors in Silverton and our new neighbors, would have a positive relationship going forward. The high density proposal also means that traffic will be drastically increased. And initially, when the Singh representative spoke to the neighbors, they mentioned about how they were for access 1 being a one-way, egress only access, and access 4 right across from the pool would be an ingress only. And the only reason that it's now on the table that access 1 and 4 would be 2 directions is because of the high density requiring a lot of traffic, increasing the traffic flow on Windfair. It has already been spoken about how lots of people walk on that, on Windfair Drive, walking to the pool, and just a lot of activity on there. This would greatly impact the safety of that neighborhood. So we hope that whatever is proposed would not increase that traffic so tremendously on Windfair, where the safety of residents and their children will be affected. And lastly, also, it has already been mentioned, because of the high density proposal again, the impervious surface area is would then cause a lot of stormwater. And if y'all could consider, even instead of a 10-year stormwater planning, to consider what it will impact in 25 years, because we do not want to flood the area and impact the neighbors that live there. So thank you so much for looking to these concerns.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Councilman. My name is Teresa Wiggins, and we reside in this right across from this property. And it just so happens that this for the last 4 years, we've been considering purchasing property, and we know that there's a wide range of choices for a family like us to choose from. And I like to say that it just so happens that in this last 2 weeks, I've heard so many comments of how the town of Cary has been so diligent and conservative in a good way in protecting the zoning for residential areas. And that's what keeps the property values very positive for homeowners. And I think this is, when we talk about just over the region or even nationally, town of Cary is known for just the environment for its residents. So I completely agree with all the points that have been mentioned about the density of the high density of Singh's proposal in more than 11 homes per acre is something that needs to be considered, considering just right across Winfair is homes that are it's just 2 to 3 homes per acre. I think that is drastic, along with all the other considerations that have been brought up. We just appreciate so much the town of Cary considering what it does to the residents and the property values in the whole, and what town of Cary is known for. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name's Frank Bricio. I live at 103 Chancellor's Ridge Court. I'm about a few hundred feet away from this development, and I've been participating in the discussion of this development of this property for the last 3 or 4 years. I just don't want to repeat what everybody else has said, because I know that they've done a good job, and I don't want to waste your time in that regard. But I do also want to just put in a little in everybody's mind a little history about what's going on, because I think the background's a little bit informative too. If everybody will recall, the property was purchased probably at the peak of the real estate market, and at that point, or subsequently, the prices of real estate have dropped and the development opportunities have lessened. And I think what we're seeing as far as the plans proposed by the developer really reflect the fact that they're trying to do something to recoup their money as quickly or as best as they can. But the real question is, what's the best use of that property? And I think that's what's in the interest of the town council and the neighbors. What is the best use of that property? And a long time ago, the town went through a process and determined that that property should be used for commercial purposes. And to date, no one has said why that should not be used for commercial purposes. I don't know why the town should abandon that idea when nobody has presented any kind of evidence to say that that's not a good commercial property. What we're seeing is that it probably could still be a commercial property, but not at the rate of return that the developer had initially imagined or envisioned. And just because the developer is not going to be able to recoup their money or the same amount of profit doesn't mean that the town should look at this and say, hey, let's help out the developer, change the designation of that property to some other use, when there's no proof that another use is better for that. As indicated, other people have said, and anybody that's familiar with this area, is there's development of apartment complexes going around all around there, and those areas were already determined by the town to be appropriate uses of that land. Like I said, the town has determined that the best use of this property is commercial, and nothing has been offered to say that it should not be used as commercial. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Anyone else for this public hearing? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. We'll open it up to council members for questions or comments.
I'm a little hesitant to make comments just because I'm optimistic that when this goes back to the Planning and Zoning Board, and then there's obviously meetings with citizens to possibly work on the project, that some changes will be made. So I don't know that we'll actually be talking about this project maybe the next time we see it. It might be a little different. It might be a lot different. I mean, I have some general comments I can make, but in regards to the streetscape buffer concern along Evans and Cary Parkway, I feel like part of that is because they've tried to give more buffer than 50 feet on the Winfair side to be sensitive to the residents in the single-family homes there. That was a big concern they've heard for years. I mean, the gentleman that spoke about the history, I've been to a lot of meetings on this property over a lot of years, and there's been a number of different proposals. Some of the concerns to me seem to be in conflict when they talk about traffic, but yet they want or would prefer a commercial use. The commercial use is going to generate more traffic than the residential. Different kind of traffic, but it will generate more traffic. The commercial at this location at one time, I think, could have been a more viable option, but given the Park West development down the road, I just don't know how viable that's going to be anytime soon. I mean, shoot, it took our Chili's away on Gilder Farm Road and took TJ Maxx off of Walnut Street. It's just kind of sucking businesses away from everywhere. If there was commercial on this site, I mean, they may have packed up and gone to Park West. Everybody else is. I do think they've gone or have made a valiant effort in regards to stormwater runoff, meeting the 10-year storm. Density is always that funny argument to me because it's, you know, some people say it's too dense, some not enough, but nobody can ever give you that magic number. But to me, the transition argument does have merit. You know, yes, you've got single-family homes, 2-3 homes per acre on one side of the street, and you're going to, you know, 11 units per acre right on the other side. I mean, that argument has merit to me. The traffic argument, not so much. I mean, we went through a very contentious apartment discussion over on Jack's side of town a while back, and you know, I wanted to know how much more traffic is commercial versus residential. So I went and sat in apartment complex parking lots and went and sat in commercial development parking lots, and I counted a heck of a lot more cars coming and going on the commercial one than I ever did in the apartments. So I believe the residents do have some concerns. I really, really appreciate the applicant and Singh's efforts to try and to want to continue to meet with the residents and try to see if they can work those concerns out and hopefully get those protests removed. Could it be a combination of commercial and residential? Yeah. Could it be some office in there? Could we get maybe some, something like the office on Cary Parkway over by Preston where you've got all the dentist office, doctor's offices and stuff like that? I mean, that could be a good use somewhere in here as well, but personally, I like the last plan they had better, but you know, the market's changed. The commercial, like I said, is going to Park West, and they could build a lot of commercial buildings and then they might sit vacant for years. So I do appreciate the transit easement for when we eventually run a C-Tran route and public transportation through here. I can't tell you how many meetings I've been to with Singh and the residents over the years, and I've been to a lot of meetings with applicants and I don't know that I've ever worked with an applicant who wants to address all their concerns as much as Singh has, and I believe they're genuine in their efforts, and they've been working on this for probably 7-8 years. They haven't let the property go yet. They want to do something here. They want to make the residents happy. And if after 7-8 years they want to continue to try, then I'm like, let them go for it. You know, I'm all for sending this back to P&Z. My only question, I guess, would be regarding the timeline and, you know, how that works. Will they have meetings with residents first and then go to P&Z? Do we know when they'd go to P&Z? I mean, or is it just kind of an open, they'll call you when they're ready? Or
If they're going to introduce new zoning conditions, they'll need to allow enough time for us to advertise another public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Board. It would not take place in July regardless. It would, you know, August would be the soonest that they'd be able to take it back. If they're introducing changes to the plan, staff would need to reevaluate it as well. Our expectation would be that it stay moving forward or that there be significant progress taking place on it. And I do believe the applicant intends to have that happen as well. So.
If there's no other comments, I'd like to make a motion.
Well, on that point, I mean, I would like the motion to basically say, if there are not changes, no need to send it back to P&Z. They've already vetted this one.
They're going to make changes.
So, well, I just want to make sure, and that changes means public hearing. So
Correct.
I just want to make sure there are changes and there is a public hearing.
Absolutely.
And if so, I'm all for that. But if it's after their discussion with the residents, if they leave the plan as is, then bring it back here and let us decide. No need to put P&Z through it again. So.
I think they're pretty cognizant that if they brought the same plan back with a valid protest petition.
I'm sure they are.
It's DOA.
Right.
So.
Any other questions?
The only thing I'd say is I appreciated the tenor of the comments, both from the applicant and the neighbors, that demonstrates a willingness to want to get a win out of this. And I think the neighbors have articulated their concerns very well. The applicant's shown a willingness to listen. I have optimism that when this comes back to us, it'll be something that looks a lot different and better. So I'd support Mr. Frantz's motion when he makes it.
Well, go ahead and make the motion.
Make a motion to refer this back to the P&Z board.
Second.
There's a motion second. In the discussion, just my preferences, and I've heard a lot from the residents, and I think they make a lot of valid points. They organize their arguments very well. I agree. I would like to see a commercial component. I think community activity center commercial would work well. A Starbucks or something like that would fit here and not be in competition as much with Park West, because you're serving the community, not a region, which is what that is, a region activity center. Also think that townhomes would serve well, a mixture of townhomes, commercial, maybe the rental as well. Those are things that sound attractive to me, and it sounds like it's attractive to the residents as well, and less intensity. But then it comes down to can you make this work financially? And that's what it's all about. I don't know if they'll be able to do that, but that's what we're going to find out. But that's just my thoughts and my preferences. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add. Mr. Yerha.
Yeah, when I see a land use change this radical from commercial to multifamily, I have to ask myself, the present use, is it really that bad? And the proposed use, is it really that good? And I'm not convinced of either. But my main objective with this is that when it does come back to us, whether it's in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, or a year, is that there's no valid protest petition. That's the main objective. I know it's before us before, and there's been protest petitions before. And I am optimistic, same as you, Ms. Adcock, that the residents and the applicant can work things out. Because that's what really counts, I think, is that everybody's satisfied before it comes back to us, that we don't have to just turn it down after all that work. So please, both sides, please try to work together as long as it takes.
Okay. Anything else? We have a motion on the table. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Granick.
And just would like to point out that obviously you won't be taking action then on the statement of consistency and reasonableness tonight. So I believe you'll need a motion to defer that, and the waiver to the, just automatically would move. Okay, no action would take place on those items.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We now move to our second public hearing. This is item E2, the Park West Lake Open Space. This item consists of 2 annexations and a rezoning. Ms. Bierman of our staff will present the staff's report on these 3 items. We're going to hear from the applicant, and then we're going to open up the public hearing on the annexations and the rezonings. We will not take final action on these items this evening, and we're going to refer them to the Planning and Zoning Board for their recommendation. Ms. Bierman.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a public hearing on a request to annex and apply the initial zoning to about 21.5 acres in the Park at Westlake. Park at Westlake is a cluster subdivision. It was approved under Wake County regulations with an agreement that it would be annexed by Cary as the property is developed. The subject property of this request includes 3 lots for open space and recreation use, and I'll point out these are the last lots in the Park at Westlake to go through this process. You've seen about 20 of these cases over the last 10 years, and this will be the final one. This is an aerial view. It shows the location of the property that's included in this request. The current zoning districts are residential 20 and residential 30 in Wake County. The proposed town of Cary zoning district is resource recreation. This is the district that corresponds with the use of the site for open space and recreation use that's reflected in the overall plan for the cluster subdivision. Residential or uses would not be allowed on these parcels. The plan designation for these areas is very low or very low density residential and parks and open space. The open space areas under consideration do consist of floodway and flood hazard areas. The applicant is currently working with the staff to dedicate a 30-foot greenway easement that will be developed around the perimeter of the property. At this point, there's no funding for the actual greenway, so there's no time frame for the construction of that. This map shows property owners that were notified within 400 feet of the site. There's also, property was posted and advertised as required. This concludes staff's presentation. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to invite the applicant forward for their comments.
Applicant may not be here. He
Okay.
typically is not at these hearings.
All right, very good. We'll move right along to the public hearing, and I would open the public hearing and invite the first speaker forward. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? I see no one. I'll close it and open it up to council members for discussion, comments, motion.
We're sending this to P
P
and Z.
That's right, send it to P and Z.
I'll just be glad when this is done so we quit looking at the same map.
That's right.
This will be the
So we'll see.
easy one. It's nice to finish off on.
So if there are no comments, we'll send this to Planning and Zoning Board. Thank you, Ms. Bierman. We'll next move to public hearing number 3. That's item E3 on our agenda, the Jones House rezoning request. It's number 13 RZ 5. Ms. Bierman, once again, will present the staff's presentation, and then we're going to open the public hearing. And the council will not take action this evening. We'll send it to the Planning and Zoning Board. Ms. Bierman.
This is a request by the property owner, which in this case is the town of Cary, to rezone .39 acres at 324 South Academy Street. This is the property that is the site of the Jones House. This is a vicinity map. You can see the location of the site at the northwest corner of South Academy Street and Dry Avenue. The property is in the town center area plan with the plan designation of high-intensity mixed use. The existing zoning on this site is general commercial conditional use. This zoning has been in effect since 1987, which was before the TCAP was adopted. There are zoning conditions that were included in that 1987 rezoning. There are 4 zoning conditions that carry over that affect the development of the site, including the location of parking areas. The proposed zoning district is HMXD, which is a high-intensity mixed use, and this is a district that corresponds with the plan designation of HMXD in the town center area plan. The property would have been rezoned to HMXD at the time that the TCAP was adopted in 2001, had it not been subject to those zoning conditions from the earlier rezoning. According to Cary's GIS maps, there are no stream buffers or floodplains impacting the site. Parks and Greenways Master Plan does not show any proposed facilities on the site or on the frontage. Academy Street and Dry Avenue are designated as minor thoroughfares. A traffic study is not required, as there would be no net change in trip generation as a result of the rezoning request. There is a C-Tran fixed route on South Academy Street. And this shows, again, property owners within 400 feet were notified. The hearing was advertised and the property was posted. And this concludes staff's presentation. We'll be glad to answer any questions.
Very good. This time I'll open up the public hearing for this rezoning, and I would invite the first speaker forward. Anyone to speak at this public hearing? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing, and unless council has comments or questions, we'll send this to our Planning and Zoning Board. Any comments or questions?
No.
Nope. All right, this will go to the Planning and Zoning Board, and we'll move right along to public hearing number 4. It's the Mills Patterson property rezoning. This is 13 RZ 7, and Ms. Grannon of our staff will present the staff report. And we may hear from the applicant, and we'll open the public hearing. We'll not take final action on this item this evening as well. Ms. Grannon.
Thank you. This is a request to rezone 16.78 acres located at Carpenter, Upchurch Road, and Lewis Stevens Drive. As shown on the vicinity map, the subject property is located south of Green Hope High School and south of the Cary Tennis Park. The Heritage Pine subdivision is located to the north. An aerial view shows the existing conditions of the property. It is developed currently with 2 single-family detached homes. One parcel is located within the boundaries of the larger parcel, the Mills Tract. There is also a small parcel located along Lewis Stevens Drive, so a total of 3 parcels. Cary's land use plan designation for the property is medium and low-density residential. The land use plan note does note that there is a range of uses in there and supports the medium density that's proposed. There's a little residual area over here with that less than half-acre portion, and that was a result of the designation of the office and institutional zoning on the school across the street. But the land use plan evaluation does not show that a comprehensive plan amendment was needed for the subject request. The existing zoning is residential 40. The applicant has proposed residential multifamily conditional use. Conditions proposed by the applicant would be to limit the maximum density to 8 dwelling units per acre and to limit the uses to townhomes, detached and semi-detached dwellings, public athletic field, neighborhood recreation center, and public or private park. Property owners within 400 feet of the subject property were notified of the request. There were no protest petitions received. Staff did receive calls from several neighbors. One citizen was expressing need for road improvements. When we prepared the presentation, I thought she was talking about on Lewis Stevens Drive, but she actually was concerned about some road improvements on Carpenter Upchurch Road, which is a state road. So she and I had a long conversation about that today, and she understands who she needed to contact about some road improvements. Questions from property owners to the south about buffering between uses, and one citizen calling, asking that the land be reserved for future expansion of the Cary Tennis Park. Cary's GIS maps identify streams on the subject property, and field determination would be required at the time of site plan review. Cary's Parks, Recreation, and Greenways Plan identifies a future greenway to the north of the property, and as I stated, to the north is the Cary Tennis Park. Would like to point out, as is noted in your staff report, that the town has been considering a portion of this land for future expansion of the tennis park. Carpenter Upchurch Road is designated as a major thoroughfare. This is a DOT-maintained road, and Lewis Stevens Drive is a minor thoroughfare. There are no transit routes in the immediate vicinity of the subject property other than a triangle transit route on NC 55 highway. At this time, I'd like to call upon the applicant, and then after the public hearing, staff and the applicant will be available for your questions.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Glenda Top with Glenda Top and Associates, and I'm here tonight representing the applicant and property owners. As Deborah has pointed out, our request is to rezone the property from R40 to RMF conditional use. We have limited the number of units to 8, and also we worked with staff in adding conditions addressing athletic fields, neighborhood recreation, and parkland for the reason that she mentioned, with interest potentially of expanding the park into a portion of this property. Just very briefly, we do feel that the use is appropriate for this location. We are consistent with the land use plan. The uses to the north is the high school and the tennis facility. To the south, there is a property zoned R40. And of course, also, we are bounded by roads on either side and also the railroad. We do feel that the zoning classification and use is suitable. As was seen on the map before you showing the stream buffers, the property is very narrow in relationship to its length and is encumbered by existing stream buffers which cross the property in 4 different locations. And with the required landscape buffers, streetscapes, and the stream buffers, the developable portion of the property is approximately 200 feet wide in places, which does make the site planning of this parcel somewhat challenging. Again, due to the constraints of the school, the park, and the road network, we do feel that the townhome use is an appropriate use for the property. We did hold a neighborhood meeting, and at that meeting, there was no opposition voiced. Since the public hearing, we have had a conversation with an adjacent property owner to the south, and also talking with him who represents another one of the property owners. And in those discussions, we are entering into tonight 2 additional conditions. We did provide them to staff earlier. We've made a few changes to the wording. We do realize they would need to be reviewed by staff further, but these are conditions that address concerns that were raised by the property owners to the south. One is a minimum of 50% of all townhomes shall be constructed with 2-car garage, and the balance of the townhomes shall be constructed with a 1-car garage. And as Deborah pointed out on the slide in terms of a concern about the buffer to the south, the buffer is not necessarily set in the width because it would depend upon, of course, the use on our side and the use that could potentially be to the south. So by condition, we have said that there will be a 40-foot type A opaque buffer along the southern property boundary, and I won't read out, but we've identified it by PIN numbers because, as staff pointed out, the property ownership could change, so it's important to identify where that buffer would be. So we are committing to a 40-foot type A buffer, which means during the site plan process, that is something that could not be varied. It is a set 40-foot buffer regardless of what use is proposed adjacent to the property. And those 2 issues were items that we did put forth to address concerns by the property owners to the south. Just wanted to note that the garage, adding the garage is a method of reducing on-street parking, thus improving safety, and it's also improving the aesthetic quality of the townhome development. And I just also want to note again that we feel that the addition of that 40-foot buffer does give the property owners to the south the protection that they need, whether they develop their property or not. Also, the land use classification for their property is basically what ours is. It's a combination of medium density and also low to medium density. So it is possible that in the future, at least immediately adjacent to our property, there could be a compatible use. Either way, we've got that 40-foot buffer. Just wanted to touch briefly, as staff pointed out, there has been discussions, with the Parks Department about the potential expansion on a portion of this property for the tennis park. We have met with them and will continue to meet with them. And again, we worked with staff in offering zoning conditions that if the property was to be rezoned, the expansion of the park would be a permitted use on this rezoning. In conclusion, we believe that the proposed rezoning is the best use of the property, and just want to note, and she is also here tonight, that Ms. Mills is a long-term resident of Cary who has lived on this property for close to 40 years. She's seen a lot of development occur around her. Obviously, she's got the school and the tennis park, and she has decided that she is ready to move. She's going to move in, still live in Cary, but would like to relocate to a retirement facility. And just want to point out that she too takes pride in her property and believes that the proposed use is appropriate for the property. I'm here to answer any questions, and there are other team members here also, if you've got questions for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Scranton, do you have anything else? Okay. This time I'll open up the public hearing for rezoning 13 REZ 7 and invite the first speaker forward. Anyone to speak at the public hearing? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. Open it up to council members for questions or comments. If not, we can send it on the P&Z. All right, that's where it'll go. Thank you, Ms. Scranton. We'll now move to our fifth public hearing, Twyla Road Comprehensive Plan Amendment Request, case number 13 CPA 2. Ms. Chandler of our staff will present the staff's report. I'll open up the public hearing, and we will not act on this item tonight. We'll send it to P&Z. Ms. Chandler.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This case is town-initiated. It's a comprehensive plan amendment request for 6.8 acres between Twyla Road and I-540. And the title, Twyla Road Part 2, comes after Twyla Road Part 1, also known as 11 CPA 05, Twyla Road Comprehensive Plan Amendment. That was approved in October 2012. That changed the land use of the properties outlined on the slide from mostly very low density residential and medium density residential to mixed use. The subject properties for Twyla Road Part 2 are outlined in yellow on this map, and as I mentioned before, they're located between Twyla Road and I-540. Notification of this request was mailed to properties shown in yellow on this map. And the slide shows stream buffers and floodways within and around the subject property. This slide shows parks and greenways in the vicinity. If you note, the Morrisville Parkway extension bisects the subject properties. A future C-Tran route is planned for Green Level Church Road. As per the Northwest Area Plan and the Southwest Area Plan that's divided by the Morrisville Parkway Extension Project, the current land use plan for the subject properties is very low density residential. And the applicant, or town initiated, us, we propose to change the land use to mixed use to match the Twyla Road Part 1 case. Following the public hearing, council may forward this request to the Planning and Zoning Board. That concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. This time I'll open up the public hearing for Comprehensive Plan Amendment 13 CPA 2 and invite the first speaker forward.
Good evening. I'm J.W. Sharon with IDS here in Cary. We're glad to see this on your agenda tonight. As you remember, she stated back last November, we brought 21 parcels here, and we were glad to receive the MXD designation. But just moving forward now and seeing this piece, which is a vital piece to make this project successful, part of our marketing effort, two things come up. This being one of them, like how is this going to fit if it's not added to, in some form of way. So I think, if this moves forward and is approved, that will help the other residents move forward with their next step in getting a developer in place. The second thing, which I know is very important to all of you too, as much as it is for a developer on ours, is getting the interchange approved. And that process has kind of taken a longer time than we wished it would take, but we understand it is still out there, still being reviewed, and we have a number of people that would like to come forward, but until that item is secured, they really can't do that. We would have loved to have been here 6 months ago with something, but so if we can get this out of the way and we get that interchange, we'll be back soon. But we look forward to your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Mr. Stevenson, welcome to Cary.
All right. Well, it's great to be here. Mayor Weinbrecht, members of the Town Council. It's good to be back here. I am here representing the Twyla Group LLC, 19 property owners, many of whom, including myself, built our homes out on Twyla Road 30-some years ago. I'm here to speak on their behalf in supporting this comprehensive plan amendment. Obviously, it's in concert with our efforts to recombine and redevelop these parcels and turn what would otherwise be properties that were orphaned and devalued in the wake of I-540 Turnpike and interchange with Morrisville Parkway into redevelopable parcels. So I appreciate the staff's efforts to support us, your efforts to turn what could be a tremendous lemon for us into lemonade. I do want to echo the comment of Mr. Sharon that we are also in the same boat from the standpoint we want to see this interchange go forward. And so if there's anything that we can do to assist you, I know the state and federal reviews are slower than expected, but if we can assist in helping those go forward more expeditiously, we'd appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Go to Campo with me. Just kidding. Next speaker, please, for this public hearing. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and open it up to council members for questions or comments. The comment I made about Campo is kind of put the interchange on hold and doesn't have a lot of support from anyone but Cary, so we would love to have support to move that forward. But they haven't said no way, so there's still hope.
Still hope, still hope.
Yep.
So you say there's still a chance.
Other comments,
Just
questions?
makes sense.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's a no-brainer for me, so. Okay, this will go to the Planning and Zoning Board, and we'll move to our next public hearing. This is item E6. It's a land development ordinance. It's land development ordinance amendments. Mr. Barker of our staff will present the staff's report. Then we'll open up the public hearing, and we're not going to take action on this item. We're going to send it to the Planning and Zoning Board. Mr. Barker.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. This is a public hearing involving a group of land development ordinance amendments which have been drafted by staff to clarify requirements, to address feedback from users, as well as feedback from the business community and council. One of the amendments on the docket is a required new state legislation, which I'll address in a moment. So I'll just go through and highlight some of these major changes. The amendments range from some significant changes to our sign ordinance to changes to the way Board of Adjustment carries out their responsibilities. It's important to note that the last item, the Zoning Board of Adjustment, was not before you to set the public hearing. Staff received notice that the General Assembly did approve some changes that would be effective October 1st, and we decided to put those in this round. So this is the first time you've seen those tonight. Some of these requests for the sign regulations, like I said, were in response to business owners and sign contractors. There was also one of the changes that we're recommending, that was recommended by the sign task force. One of the first things to talk about is the increase in logo size. The proposal recommends an increase from 20 to 30% of allowable sign area for the logo, provided that the sign has no internal illumination, is three-dimensional in design, carved or simulated carved wood, stone, or metal, and no high-intensity colors. These logos are also permitted to go up to 75% of allowable sign area within monument signs or wall signs that where buildings have architectural distinct segments and the signs meet those above standards for quality. Our current logos that we're receiving nowadays are internally illuminated cabinet signs typically. This sign is one that we have in town that meets the proposed design standards. So we believe that increasing the size of logos, there should be a corresponding increase in the quality of the sign. With regard to ground sign, this proposal recommends increasing the height of ground signs from 42 inches to 54 inches, or 3.5 feet to 4.5 feet. It also allows for ground signs for shopping center out parcels, which is not allowed at this time. However, it does limit those to 42 inches and a maximum area of 16 square feet instead of 32 square feet. We're also proposing to allow additional ground signs at each entrance to developments instead of just one on each major thoroughfare, as long as they're 300 feet apart. And as you know, we have high standards for our principal ground signs, and in response to that, a lot of businesses want to make the sign attractive as well with landscaping, but unfortunately sometimes the landscaping gets in the way of the readability of the sign, as you can see from these examples. Also the example on the right. In addition, sometimes the limitation of the height of the ground sign compresses the information so that it may not be as readable. So staff is supporting and recommending increasing the ground signs to up to 1 additional feet. With that, we would still keep the same standards, but we also would require landscaping if you're going to go up in a higher sign to soften the height. Staff has received concerns from residents as well as business owners with regard to locating businesses due to the concerns with landscaping, screening, wall signs. Staff believes we need to look at, does there need to be a balance between providing a lush landscape and providing a little bit more visibility for businesses. Sometimes because of the height of the landscape or in a location, it's hard to determine what's behind the landscape. For some businesses, well, this is kind of typical because we do have such requirements for our streetscapes. This is kind of typical throughout a lot of the downtown, especially on mature sites. And so sites like this have to rely mainly on their principal ground sign. However, because if you're an out parcel to a shopping center, you do not have this option. So what unfortunately that leads to is potentially sometimes business owners do some severe pruning of their trees. And so we're looking at how do we work to try to resolve this issue. And one way to resolve it is to propose for these out parcels to have individual ground signs as long as they are limited in size. We feel like that because they're an out parcel, they don't need the big 32-foot square foot sign, but they could have a 16 smaller sign, but still be able to increase their visibility. With regard to monument signs, the current ordinance limits this to certain large non-residential centers and within the entrance to major subdivisions. They're limited to 12 feet in height. 75% of the structure needs to be masonry material. A 32 square foot limit in the sign area, 10-foot setback, and landscaping. The changes that are proposed here, we keep those requirements the same until you get buildings on the site that total at least 130,000 square feet in area. Then those monuments go up in height 4 feet, and the amount of information can be increased to 50 square feet. And one of the most significant changes to the sign ordinance that's being proposed is to increase the square feet allocated to wall signs. And so the existing standard for most wall signs range from 1 to 1.5 square feet of area per linear foot of frontage. And so this proposal recommends for all non-residential commercial buildings to allow those to increase from 1.25 or 1 to 1.5. But when you get into a bigger shopping center with tenants of 100,000 square feet or more, then those could increase to 2 square feet per linear feet. And then the other standard would be if you have a commercial tenants that are 100,000 square feet and more, and they actually have individual architectural distinct segments within that big long building, then they could go up to 3 square feet. This is an example of our current center that has a 1 square foot limitation. As you can see, it could be challenging to read some of the signs from a distance, but of course up close they're readable. This is an example of a 2 square foot per signage per linear foot of storefront to give you a perspective of that's greater visibility. It's same here with the the Marshalls at existing crossroads, because this shopping center was done when we did have an allocation of 2 square feet per linear foot frontage. I do not have examples of the proposal for 3 square feet. However, these, the 3 square foot sign area per linear foot of frontage would be for those big tenants that are 100,000 square feet or more. And typically they have a longer sign area along the front of the building, so those signs could be spread out and may not appear so overwhelming. So, but that's up to you all to decide and through this process. With regard to flags, the proposal is to allow flags on roofs, because right now flags can only be on the ground and going up to 25 feet in height. So we're proposing to allow up to 2 flags on roofs of non-residential buildings where the building is either at least 3 stories in height, or the tenant space is 100,000 square feet or more, and the building is at least 300 feet from a thoroughfare. The maximum height would be 25 feet on the roof, and the size would be 8 by 12. And so we feel like with these standards, we want to make sure that the flags weren't trying to be an attention-getting device, and so that's why we have kind of these standards in place to limit the use of those. And this is kind of an example of what one would look like on top of a building, because they have to be a large building of 100,000 square feet or more, or a building with some height to it. Other changes include suspended signs, increasing the square footage of those from 2 to 4, as well as increasing the neon sign area from 2 to 4, and also specifically saying that you cannot, put signage on public art. And this is just an example, and of course we still have the high standards that they can't be internally illuminated with the suspended signs. Our current neon signs are 2 square feet in area, limitation in our ordinance. The proposal is to increase that to up to 4 feet, but also allow some flexibility to have 2 neon signs if you have windows on both sides of the building. One of the reasons for this, for the increase in square feet for the neon sign, is most neon signs are over, that you purchase in stores are over that square foot. And so it would be difficult for us to go and enforce it if, because we've got a lot of signs out there right now that don't meet this standard. Now shifting from signage to outdoor display of sales, we have received requests to have outdoor display of sales on the side of the building. Right now, the ordinance requires it only allows it only in the front of buildings. And so there would be certain conditions that have to be met, such as it has to be over 100,000 square feet, has to be located 300 feet from a thoroughfare, limited to 3/4 the length of the building side, and it may not project into the entrance or any entrance on that side of the building. With regards to sunrooms and screened porches, we want to kind of clarify some things in the ordinance to eliminate deck enclosures. There's some inconsistency with the building code, the way the building code has it as a way the zoning ordinance has it. We do allow up to 3 feet encroachments for decks and other similar type features, but we want to make sure that enclosed sunrooms and screened porches are not into that 3 feet required building setback. They have to meet it. Setbacks from telecommunication facilities. We as a staff feel like there's a difference between existing residents and having a new cell tower locate adjacent to them. And we feel like that the height of 2 times the tower height seems reasonable. I guess looking at, we've had several situations where you you've got an existing tower and someone wants to develop a subdivision adjacent to that existing tower, that we feel like that potentially it would be worthwhile to, lower that requirement, because people usually have an expectation when they move in, they'll know the tower is already there, and to lower that to 1 times the height, we feel like that you could still meet the safety issue, but yet still allow more development of land for residential uses. Severe pruning, staff during their experience have had some things that have come up we want to get your input on. One, we feel like we need some more flexibility to determine when to replace severely pruned trees. We also think that we need to allow some flexibility in moving understory trees around, so that there might be a provision that they can allow some gaps so people can see into developments, provided that we still get the same amount of landscaping. So this is what happens sometimes when people want more visibility, and they do some severe pruning, and so we're trying to determine, what is the best solution to help out in this situation. And sometimes that can backfire when business owners severely prune trees. Like crepe myrtles, when you severely prune them, they actually grow more intense, and thus defeating the purpose of providing more visibility. So we're trying to see, should we allow some gaps so that, some view sheds where people can relocate and move vegetation around, but still get the same number of trees on the site. With regard to group homes, there's 2 aspects to that. One is to clarify how parking is screened. There's a requirement that parking needs to be screened because there's additional parking requirements for group homes. So the current ordinance doesn't really have specific guidelines for that. So we're recommending that if it's required 4 or more parking spaces for the group home, then you have to have at least eventually have a 3-foot evergreen planting hedge or a fence to screen it from contiguous residential properties. We are not recommending screening if the existing driveway is 1 to 2 cars in width, because that's typically what an existing home has, and we're trying to say if you make changes to the site to expand that driveway, then that's when the screening kicks in. So, but that's open to get your input about that. The other aspect of group homes is just to kind of move the location where they are in the permitted use table from group living to household living, and to also clarify they're allowed in all residential dwellings as it relates to the Fair Housing Act. Based on council's recommendation several meetings ago, council recommended to eliminate the maximum buffer width of 65 feet in the mixed use overlay, and so with this, the applicants can provide as much buffer as they want to within these mixed use overlay districts. The next one, like I said before, is a state-driven thing. With the statutes going into effect October 1st, we're going to push to make certain changes to not only Board of Adjustment, but how quasi-judicial hearings are posted and noticed. And so with regard to quasi-judicial hearings, this also affects you all, because you conduct those. There would not be a published notice required for that. And also, you would only mail notice to the immediately adjacent owners, and not the 100-foot thing. And then there's just some timing about when you would post the property. One of the biggest changes is with regard to the 4/5 majority vote that's currently required on all zoning board of adjustment decisions. With the changes in the state legislation, only a simple majority would be needed for special uses appeals and reasonable accommodations, but variances would maintain the 4/5 majority. With regard to variances, just to clarify that people can ask for variance for almost all things except for changes to the land uses allowed on the property, or if the land development ordinance allows for waivers or modifications elsewhere through a different procedure. Standards for granting a variance, there's some clarification for wording for findings of facts, as well as the applicant's no longer required to show no reasonable use of the property without the variance. And of course, as usual, the hardship cannot result from the action of the applicant. With appeals of decisions by LDO enforcement officials, the appeals go to the town clerk instead of the planning department. Appeals have to be within 30 days of actual or constructive notice. Actual notice is just when you mail the notice to the affected parties, or you can post the property for 10 days, either the owner or the town. And there's just some minor changes to the conducting of the hearing. And then just some miscellaneous things for a process for subpoenas, as well as instead of certified mail, we can deliver notices first class and through email. So that concludes my presentation. And following the public hearing, we recommend you refer to the Planning and Zoning Board for their discussion recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. This time I'll open up the public hearing for the land development ordinance amendments, and I would invite the first speaker forward.
My name is Stephanie Sparrow, and I represent the owners of Harrison Square Shopping Center. We are here to express our support for the LDO amendment. Anytime there is a location like Harrison Square where the finished floor elevation of the building is 20 feet below road level and set far back from the road, it is challenging for customers to easily visit the shopping center. We have received comments from customers with regard to how difficult it was to locate the shopping center. Providing a clearly identified entryway feature that can be visible to motorists will help better direct traffic and avoid accidents by removing any uncertainty as to when to turn into the property. We plan to integrate beautiful artwork with stonework to form an aesthetic entryway monument sign that would conform to this new ordinance and that would respect the uniqueness and the aesthetics to this area. Compliance with the new ordinance would result in a vast improvement over the current signage at the property. We are excited about the plans and the quality of what we have presented to the town. Harrison Square is not the only center that can benefit from this ordinance. We feel it would be beneficial to other shopping centers and for the community, provided that the shopping centers meet the aesthetic requirements being imposed by this ordinance. By simultaneously relaxing the sign ordinance and increasing the quality of the signage, this town's standards can be met. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi. My name is Bob Stockdale. I'm a senior designer for Bass Pro Shops. I'm from Springfield, Missouri, and we're excited about coming to Cary. We want to appreciate the mayor, your time and the council's time, and particularly Mr. Barker's time and staff in trying to resolve some incongruities in the ordinance as it applies to not all retailers, but perhaps this retailer and some others that seek high quality and strong aesthetics in what we do. When we come to a community, we strongly believe that we become part of that community. We come here as a partner in the town. We support the town's initiatives to create a good place to work, a good place to raise families, an attractive town, certainly an attractive town, a green town, and one that is proud of the aesthetic character of the town, the existing character, and it is our intent as investing in the town is to abide by those same objectives. Also wanted to just add that in terms of aesthetics, when I was reading through one of the past amendments to the LDO, I think it was in April of 11, I think the word aesthetics was referred to in the declarations at least 20 times. So we get that message loud and clear. And I will tell you, as a representative of our company and our owner, aesthetics, tradition, quality, authenticity, human, tactile detailing, architectural authenticity is paramount to the projects we bring forward. We become an integral and an important aspect in addition to each town that we come to. What we're trying to create is a destination, an experience for visitors and customers. Not only do we attract local customers, but in support of your objectives of the sign ordinance, we also attract customers from as far away as 50 miles and further. So not only do we attract new business to the community, we also attract a lot of new sales dollars to the community because our clientele, our research shows us that our clientele comes from 50, 100 miles away to visit our store. I did provide a small handout there, if I can walk you through it in the time I have allowed. Certainly we appreciate the purposes of a sign ordinance. We do this quite honestly around the country quite often. I'm up in New Hampshire next week, July 1st, to talk to them about the same issues. The first page basically speaks to what everybody's concerned about, us as well. Big box retailers come in, they put up large objectionable signs. They're trying to be bigger and brighter than the next guy. But the problem is that the signs lack character, they lack human scale. The building, the architecture just doesn't have anything that is humanistic in quality. It doesn't feel like it was built by humans. It feels like it was built by machines. So we want to say that we support that position. This is certainly what we want to avoid, this first page. The second page is our store in Branson, Missouri. The next page is our store in Dania, Florida. And the page following is our store in Denham Springs, Louisiana. And the reason I brought these three examples, one is to show that the signage, in our view, is an integral part of our design. The signs are as important to the design of the building as any architectural feature on the building, whether it be siding, brick, stone, column details, lanterns. They're all an integral part of our design aesthetic and our brand, if you will. So it's very important to us that the whole is integrated together to create an experience for our visitors and our customers. And you can see by the character of the stores themselves are visually very active, animated, and the signs are part of that same active and animated business. When you put a big sign on a flat wall, that sign just screams at you. When you put attractive, handcrafted signs on an otherwise attractive building with ins and outs and character, as Mr. Barker had represented with the various facades, I think it creates an overall pleasing aesthetic and an exciting and sort of an adventurous shopping experience. The next page, if you're tracking with me, is this pedestrian and redhead sign above the window. Again, just to reinforce that we take our graphics very seriously and very creatively. We have a graphics department, if you will, that part of our experience. What we do as a retailer is make sure that every piece of our project kind of invokes a wow response from our customers. And we like to incorporate the signage into the overall retail experience, as the redhead sign on the right tries to demonstrate. The next slide, or next picture rather, is we go way beyond just an attention to detail in our graphics. The detail in our lighting, a lot of our lighting is custom made by our own fabrication shops. A lot of our ornamental handrails are made right there in Springfield, Missouri by our custom fabrication shop. So we're very serious about delivering what we talk about, what we commit to. Does that mean I'm...
Mr. Stockdale, I'm sorry.
I
was hoping you'd get to the next one, but...
I can't. I guess I cannot.
Unless you have someone with you, they can continue your comments. But we do appreciate the handout very much. And feel free to call us if you have any questions.
If I just may, I'm not going to present, but that black and white graphic, the imagery for the store is responding to the Pisgah, is that the pronunciation? The cabins in the Pisgah National Forest. So that's the architectural character we're trying to bring to the store. So that's what those two slides are for. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Anyone else for this public? Oh, there we go.
Hey.
I'm Suzanne Davis from Stony Brook Estates in Cary, and I would like to thank staff for putting 25F on tonight's page. We live in a neighborhood with 2 group homes, and the working definition I had of a group home was if you have a load of stones and you dump it in your side yard, you're good to go, and you can flip that one family home that may not sell into a residence for 8 people to come in. What happens a lot of times, or what we've seen in our neighborhood, is there's not a lot of transition. So you have this single-family neighborhood, and all of a sudden you get one home that has parking for 8 cars. And they kind of come in and come out, and it reminds you very much of an office use, but it's residential. By putting this in and clarifying the current ordinance that's in place, this will make it a much nicer transition for the residents who live nearby, provide privacy, and also will be provide consistency with what the town currently does with parking lots that have more than 4 cars. So thanks so much for having this on there, and I hope this goes through.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Anyone else for this public hearing? I see no one. We'll close the public hearing, open it up to council members for questions or comments. If not, the Planning and Zoning Board will be the next stop. Thank you, Mr. Barker. Oh, did
I was just going to say,
Look in this direction.
What?
I was just going to say, I certainly echoed Ms. Davis's comments about the group homes and the clarification about screening of parking. I think it shows sensitivity both to the need for group homes, which we support, but also the needs of the neighbors in those neighborhoods, and I think it's a really good move.
And I just have some reservation about the expansion of the neon from 2 feet to 4 feet and the flags. I just want to make sure that when the Planning and Zoning Board reviews this, that they look at the full ramifications of changing our ordinances.
Okay.
And I would just counter that with I fully support the 2 feet to 4 feet, and I love the flags. Bigger the better.
Anyone else?
I'll concur with Ms. Robbins.
Oh, it sounds like a throwdown.
Ms. Bush?
I'm going to save all my comments for the following ordinance.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Mr. Barker.
Thank you.
We next go to our last public hearing. Public hearing number 7 consists of 3 annexations, case number 13A8, 13A11, 13A12, and Mr. Nicholas of our staff will present staff's recommendation. We'll open up the public hearing, and we can take action on these items this evening. Mr. Nicholas.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. This first petition, number 13A08, is a request for annexation of approximately 37.2 acres of property located at 11525 Green Level Church Road and 7505 Wake Road, approximately 570 feet west of the Green Level Church Road and Kit Creek Road intersection. Request also includes 1.38 acres of adjacent right-of-way. The site is in Cary's ETJ, and it's currently zoned mixed use. Next petition, 13A11, is a request for annexation of approximately 1.4 acres of property located at 1024 Waldo Rood Boulevard, approximately 600 feet east of the Waldo Rood Boulevard, Upchurch Farm Road, and Jenks Carpenter Road intersection. Request also includes 1.22 acres of adjacent right-of-way. Property is in Cary's ETJ and is currently zoned residential 40. The final petition for public hearing this evening is 13A12. It's a request for annexation of approximately 3.5 acres of property located at 3680 Old Raleigh Road, the southwest corner of the Old Raleigh Road and McKinnon Drive intersection. Property is in Cary's ETJ and is currently zoned Office Research and Development. Request is associated with a site plan number 13 SP 13, which is a proposed expansion of an existing automobile sales and service center. This concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. At this time, I'll open up the public hearing for all 3 of these annexations, and I would invite the first speaker forward at this time. Anyone here to speak at this public hearing? I see no one. I'll close the public hearing, open it up to council members for question, comments, or motion.
Make a motion.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to ask if you needed 3 separate motions or one motion.
One motion.
Go ahead, Mr. Frantz.
Make a motion to approve annexation petitions 13-A08, 11, and 12.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. That moves us to land development discussion items. We're at item F1, the Meacham Property Comprehensive Plan Amendment, case number 12 CPA 7. Ms. Chandler of our staff is going to present the staff presentation. We're going to hear a recommendation from our planning board representative, and then we can take action this evening. Ms. Chandler.
Thank you. Good evening again. This is the Meacham Property Comprehensive Plan Amendment. It's a request for 15, or a little over 15 acres for 7640 Carpenter Fire Station Road and one other unaddressed property on Carpenter Fire Station Road. Property is located at the northeast corner of Green Level Church Road and Carpenter Fire Station Road. As per the Northwest Area Plan, the current land use designation for the subject property is mixed use and includes Northwest Area Plan Note 10, which states at least half of the mixed use area should be used for medium or high density residential. The applicant proposes to change the land use designation to commercial and remove Note 10 from the subject property. At the Town Council public hearing in February, one citizen stated support for commercial land use, and an adjacent property owner representative stated opposition to the request and said that the community is adequately served by existing retail. At the Planning and Zoning Board public hearing last month, 4 citizens spoke. One opposed the commercial land use. A second was interested in seeing office space and nice restaurants on the subject property. Third person was concerned about losing existing vegetation. And the fourth was part of the development team for the applicant and requested the opportunity to address the community's concerns. As part of the staff analysis, we looked at the Cary Park mixed-use center statistics. The first column shows the existing floor space. The second column that notes potential build-out includes what could happen on the subject property as well as on the vacant properties in the Cary Park Community Mixed-Use Center. Then the total of those two items, and we can compare those to the recommended general characteristics from the Town of Cary Land Use Plan. So you can see from this table, the center is light and office space and has a reasonable amount of residential development. So with this comprehensive plan amendment request, both mixed use and commercial could be appropriate on this site. However, a mix of commercial and office has the potential of providing the best balance of uses for the Cary Park Community Mixed Use Center. Staff believes it is reasonable to remove Northwest Area Plan Note 10, stating the requirement for 50% residential because of the amount of residential that is in the center and in the area. So when considering a comprehensive plan amendment request, the land development ordinance specifies 4 criteria. Staff believes the item, the change in projections or assumptions, is met because the development patterns and uses have varied from the Northwest Area Plan's original draft, with resulting in more residential development than originally anticipated. Staff recommends approval of the removal of Northwest Area Plan Note 10 while maintaining the mixed-use land use designation. At the Planning and Zoning Board public hearing or after that, there was discussion about the pros and cons of mixed use versus commercial, and the majority of the board agreed that commercial would provide the most flexibility for the property. And I'll invite Mr. Swanstrom to talk about the Planning and Zoning Board's recommendation and vote, if he is still here.
Well, you've pretty well had a summary of what we talked about. We did vote 8-1 to recommend approval of this. We observed that in commercial, you can include small professional offices. So attorneys, doctors, dentists, real estate agents, insurance brokers could provide some of the office that we were thinking would be appropriate here within the commercial designation. We really didn't see that it was necessary to include an MXD, specific MXD designation, which would put some requirements on this property that probably would have been a little onerous for the developer. No questions?
Thank you. Questions?
Just to help summarize everything that was just said. This slide shows the current land use designation, the applicant's request, and the Planning and Zoning Board recommendation in the middle, and the staff recommendation on the right. So council may take action, and the slide again for discussion.
Thank you for leaving that slide up. I'll open it up to council members for questions, comments.
I mean, to me, the request makes sense. I mean, the area's pretty saturated with residential right now anyway. I think some more expanded commercial uses would add to the greater mix of the whole center. So, I mean, I support the applicant's request to go to commercial.
Yeah, I agree. People who live out in western Cary find that there's not a lot of commercial opportunities for them. And I think that the citizens would appreciate having some more businesses. I think doing it with the commercial designation it works well, just as well or better as mixed use.
Mr. Smith?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Oh. Well, I want to ask a question then about staff's recommendation. It seems like P&Z and council's leaning toward the proposed land use, and I'm curious why staff did not. What are the, I know you went over some pros and cons.
Sure, sure.
What's the objection that drove you to that recommendation?
Certainly. With the mixed use, it does require more than one item. It could be commercial and office, commercial and residential, office residential. Staff believes the flexibility of mixed use could be of benefit because when the applicant is going through the preliminary development plan and mixed use rezoning process, let's say the townhome community to the east of the subject property is more comfortable with residential development or office development adjacent to their neighborhood. Mixed use would allow the flexibility to have something adjacent to that neighborhood transitioning to the commercial development.
So let me see if I can summarize it another way. If it's commercial, you can't have any more residential.
Right.
Otherwise,
You could have some
with the mix, you can have a little bit of everything. Commercial allows mostly retail and some office, a little bit of office.
But it requires the mix.
Right.
So if they ended up wanting to develop the entire site as commercial, they could not.
Right.
So if I'm hearing you right, Meredith, it's a transition issue. You feel like there's greater opportunity for transition from the residential neighborhood adjacent.
Right, that gives some flexibility
With
there
MXD.
for those neighbors.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned before, staff does believe that either commercial or mixed use could work here. We just believe the mixed use could make a little more sense with balancing of uses and the possibility for transition with the neighborhood.
I have a follow-up. In case, I'm sorry if I missed this, but did we hear from, were there neighbors who were in favor of one over the other? Did anybody speak against the applicant's proposal for a commercial?
Actually, the applicant, I believe she is still here. She may be able to answer that based on comments she heard at the neighborhood meeting. As far as the Planning and Zoning Board public hearing, we heard from 2 citizens who live in the adjacent neighborhood, and one of those comments was saying she wished that there was a nice restaurant there. And one of the other comment was she was concerned about losing vegetation, and that's a classic concern we hear with any development.
But no one who was concerned about that whole transition issue of some different density of residential.
I have not heard any specific comments. Again, the applicant.
I just think that I would. I'd like to hear from the applicant and ask that question because it's like Mr. Smith loves to say 4951, you know. Somebody had to say it, Jack.
Glenda Top, can you ask the question?
I was just
again?
curious if any of the adjacent neighbors had concerns that with the change in zoning from mixed use to commercial, that the transition would be harsh or, you know, too intense or something.
What satisfied the neighbors, we are in a mixed-use overlay district, and we've got to provide a preliminary development plan. And in that preliminary development plan, we have got to lay out the proposed uses, whatever they may be. So what they understood with being in that overlay district and providing them with the preliminary development plan, they will see exactly what we're proposing. They will see exactly what the transition is. They will see the buffer, and they will have an opportunity, as you all will, to see that plan. So as we move through that process, we cannot do residential under the commercial, which at least in from what we, saw in staff's report, that there is sufficient, appears to be sufficient residential. But with the commercial, as the planning board said also, is that we can provide a transition voluntarily if we need to, as we meet with the neighbors. But that preliminary development plan will show them exactly what we're doing. And that gave them the level of comfort that they felt needed to be there to move forward.
Thank you, Glenda.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments?
I guess I strongly support getting rid of Note 10. I think everybody wants to get rid of Note 10 off of there, that's for sure. But as I said on the case earlier, when we're changing a land use, I have to ask myself what's terribly wrong with the current one and what's terribly good with the new one. I don't see anything terribly wrong with the current land use designation. And I know residents out there are clamoring for services, that's for sure. And there is a need for commercial, but I think some of the services they're clamoring for are also O&I. And I know it can be accommodated to a degree within commercial. But again, the current land use is a mix. I think there is flexibility. So if anything, I'm leaning toward the staff recommendation versus the other, although it's 51-49 also.
I think it's important for us to ask the applicant what is to be gained if we are to remove the Note 10. What's to be gained by moving from the mixed use to the commercial? Is there enough to be gained? I mean, maybe everything that they really need can be achieved just by the removal of that note.
Good question.
Because with MXD, they don't have to do residential, do they? They just have the option to do residential.
No, they can do commercial and O&I.
It just has to be a
Just can't be
guaranteed
one.
mix of uses, yes.
If it's commercial, you can still have O&I.
Yes, in both cases.
Does the applicant want to answer that question?
Tom, would you come back?
Don't go home, Glenda.
So as you're walking up here, I'll see if I can restate the question. What can be gained from commercial as opposed to mixed use with Note 10 gone?
Site is approximately, and also the potential developer is here also, so he might want to speak after me. The site is approximately 15 acres. About 3 acres of it is undevelopable because it's in buffer and streams, so it's a small site to start with. As we have, or as the developers have gone into the area, the shopping center, from what we have been told, the shopping center that's there now is basically 100% leased. Given the size of the tract and the desire to provide services that we feel is needed for the area and that the residents would like to see, we want to be able to have the maximum flexibility within that piece of property to propose uses that are needed and appropriate versus having to say, and again, it's an arbitrary number. It doesn't necessarily have to be a certain amount of office, but if we're proposing 70% commercial and 30% office, and all of a sudden you have a space that can't be leased and you've got this great use that everybody would like to see, then the flexibility is there to have the uses that you want. Again, in looking at the uses across the street, you are seeing a lot more doctors' offices, insurance offices, uses that didn't traditionally go into shopping centers. You're seeing them in shopping centers. Actually, a lot of doctors, dentists are preferring to go into the centers. We just feel it's not going to be a large center. It's not going to be as big as across the street, but we want to, or the developer would like the flexibility to go with, I don't want to say, even though I'm going to say it really, it's the market. The people want a nice restaurant. They want to be able to walk to, they want to be able to walk to a nice sit-down restaurant. Or they might want to go to a Starbucks. And when you start taking such a small site and saying a certain percent needs to be a certain use, then we think you begin to constrain what could be a better design for the center. And by going straight commercial, that transition can still be there because we're going to have to give them the transition regardless of what the use is, which is one of the things that in talking with those neighbors, they've got commercial there already. So they were less concerned with, again, the use and more concerned with what it was going to look like. Did that help you at all? I hope.
I'm looking at both ends of the table.
I'm saying yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
That's one person saying yes, ma'am. Anyway,
Are we ready for Mr. Smith?
I believe
I think we are.
Well, I still had questions.
Oh,
but,
go ahead.
No, when I first looked at this, there's kind of a natural tendency, you want to kind of stay with the plan and the flexibility of, the way the plan is set up. But when you really look at it, you're looking at 12 usable acres. You're looking at a high demand for that area use, as was discussed with the restaurants and the commercial, but also the fact that a lot of commercial areas have in it the O&I. I think it's one of those things where I don't think we're violating the intent of what we're doing with our planning, but we're just applying a layer of common sense to that small piece of property and the location that it's at. And that's kind of why, at first I said, nah, I don't know if I want to do that. But the more you look at it, I don't really think we're violating the spirit of our planning process and our planning for out there. And I just think there's a balance there, So with that said, I'm going to make a motion that we approve this rezoning request.
As proposed by the applicant.
As proposed by the applicant.
Second.
There's a motion, second discussion.
I would just clarify that it's a CPA amendment, isn't it? Not a rezone.
Oh,
well,
The CPA?
Yeah.
That's all, just so that,
Good catch.
just so that
And Don's clear with that, too.
Sue doesn't have
Yeah.
to tell us later.
Thank you.
Thank you for catching that. Any comments?
Mr. Smith's wisdom may have won the day again.
You quit while you're ahead, Jay.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Chandler. We now move to old and new business. We had, I'm reading notes here. It says, any items pulled from regular consent discussion items, P1 will be discussed during this portion. So after we do the Mr. Smith's item here, we're going to go and do Ms. Bush item. So Mr. Smith has a council-initiated request, which is item G1, and it's the interconnections between Orchard Knoll Drive, Bamberg Lane, and Lawdraker Road. Mr. Smith.
I didn't know that was the name of the road, Lawdraker. This is an area near me. This came before us. There was a question, through email, I communicated with some of the folks about, are we really worrying about something that may not happen in anybody's lifetime? But there was a lot of concern about the fact that as the people living there are considering selling and like empty nesters, that the fear of having that connector policy on there, they would feel comfortable if we would investigate that being removed. And so, what I said is, there's a process. We keep looking at our long-range plans, but I will bring it to the council for discussion, and that's what I'm doing. I'm bringing it to the council for
Ms. Bush, you're the
discussion on the
co-sponsor.
connector road issue.
Right, I agree. Just like all of the other things we bring before council, I'd love to hear staff give us feedback on the pros and cons of this and in a report, and then for us to be able to discuss it and determine what the right thing to do is.
And before we get a motion, Mr. Bailey, do you have any questions on direction?
No, just here if you had any questions.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we, direct staff to investigate removing the interconnection between Orchard Knoll, between the three roads, Orchard Knoll, Bambrange, and Lawdraker Road.
Okay. Is there a second? And a second discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Now we move to the item that was pulled from the consent agenda. It's ratification of the strings of lights. And Ms. Bush, this is your item.
I'm ready to talk about it too. And thank you, Ms. Behrman, for your time today. I just wanted to bring up several items regarding string lights, and I don't have a close affinity to string lights. I don't, being Jewish, I don't have a lot of experience with them, so we don't use string lights that often. But I do want to bring up several items regarding the ordinance that I'm not sure that the rest of council is aware of when we looked at this. And first, I do applaud the goal of this ordinance to protect and enhance the aesthetics of our community while providing an opportunity for businesses that use these lights to attract people and do what they do best. They provide a warm and ambience to the environment, a wonderful setting. If you've ever been under the trees at Goodberry's eating your ice cream on a warm summer's night, you know what that's like, right? And if you've eaten outside downtown at Bosphorus or at Clara's when it was open, or whatever its last name is, you can understand what that feeling is like by those indirect lights. And I understand that we want to reduce the amount of light pollution, and I support that. And also ensure that the areas that are lit are done in an aesthetically pleasing manner. There's the 21st time we've talked about. But there are several items I'd like to bring up, and I'd like to also request a change at the end. One of the changes that council requested to the ordinance was that was not put forward by staff and also not approved of by P&Z, which, by the way, approved the original wording unanimously, was a restriction of these lights to downtown and mixed-use overlays only. Now, both staff and P&Z suggested that these changes be town-wide. Thanks to Ms. Bierman's help today, I was directed to the map of the mixed-use overlay districts, which, by the way, I found really hard to find on the website because it's not called mixed-use overlays district on the map. It's called zoning maps, but I digress. In taking a look at our mixed-use overlay district, I was surprised to find a number of commercial and retail areas that aren't part of the mixed-use overlay. For instance, Fresh Market, which has several restaurants, is not part of a mixed-use overlay. They have several areas in the Fresh Market, several restaurants there, who would not be able to use string lights. Other areas of Walnut Street, also not included in the mixed-use districts where there's new restaurants going up. We have a new brewer coming in, Fortnight Brewery, can't wait, who may want to open up a tasting center outside, which, but guess what? They're not in a mixed-use overlay district. So what we're opening ourselves up to may not be what we intended. So the Parkway Plaza, where Fresh Market is, and the several others, I think we may be creating a problem that we may not have intended. By restricting it to downtown and mixed-use overlay districts only, I don't think we're being equitable to all the small businesses that like to use these lights to enhance, to attract people. And I'd like to see, my request, is that we change the ordinance, the first part of it, back to what staff and P&Z both originally recommended, that would allow them to use these lights to draw customers and create warm and inviting areas across the town. There you go.
One of the problems I have is writing ordinances at the table, and that's why we're doing ratification. I would prefer, if you're going to do anything, approve the ratification tonight and then come back and try with an amendment later.
The only thing I understand.
Ms. Simpson probably wants to speak to this.
If I might, Council, you adopted this amendment last meeting, and this is what you adopted without having notice and all. You can't make changes to it. This was just brought back to clarify that this was the language that you adopted.
Could we table this and then direct staff to go back and make
We've
changes?
already approved it.
I would recommend, yeah, it's been approved, and this was just meant to clarify the language to make sure there was no ambiguity or questions. So I would recommend that you approve it and direct staff in a later, perhaps the next round that comes forward, to bring forward the proposed changes.
Could we approve it and then immediately direct staff begin working on
Yeah, if that would be your desire.
But that's going to be two separate things.
Yes.
I want discussion on that because, I think, from my perspective, we had that discussion, and it was intentional that we wanted to be inequitable. I guess unfair is too harsh, but the intent was to do something special and unique for downtown. Now, if we want to later on, and I thought part of our discussion the past week was that, we have a perfect incubator of working and trying things downtown and making things unique. We were trying to attract things downtown. And, I think the whole idea of, so I think, I don't mind parking my comments till we get through this approving the wording, but I think we should let some time go by and see how it's working downtown before we start changing our ordinances and codes for
But you
downtown.
do realize that the way the ordinance is currently written, it's not just for downtown. The one that we're ratifying is for downtown and mixed use, specific
But
mixed use overlay district.
that's current, that's our current ordinance.
Yeah, that's the way it's been.
We've had that for a while.
Right, but it was struck in the original item that came to us.
The existing wording was applying only in the downtown and the mixed-use overlay districts. The proposed amendment that we brought forward would have extended that townwide, and then the action that you took was to maintain the limit to downtown and the mixed-use overlay district.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion to ratify?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion second, discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
Motion carries 5-2. Those were the noes, too, yeah. Any follow-up motions?
I'd like to make a motion that we reconsider and redirect staff to look at incorporating this to be townwide for a future LDO ordinance amendment.
Second.
There's a motion second, discussion.
I would just ask that in your motion, you don't say reconsider, because that's a separate parliamentary thing, and it sounds like you're asking to reconsider our action, and we're not. You're asking that we direct staff to bring us an amendment in the next round of LDO, right?
Right.
Just clarification, I just wanted to understand.
And you're okay with that? Okay. Further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No. A point of question, just a question on how this works for Ms. Bierman. If Fresh Market, any of the restaurants at Fresh Market or any of these places that are not in a mixed-use overlay, what is the process for them to move forward if they want lights? Because they're there now. I'm not turning any of them in, but
The lights, the way the ordinance is written now, lights with in the landscaping would only be allowed in the town center, the mixed-use overlay district, so those would not be allowed and would be
would they request a variance? Or there's just no option for any other small business to leverage this
There would,
capability?
there would not, that would be more of a use-related type item. I don't know that there would be any variance option for that. It's just simply the standard in the ordinance limits the lighting to the specific areas. So that would need the ordinance amendment to expand that.
So to summarize that vote, it was 5-2 in denial. You got that? Okay. That moves us to our last item, which is the budget. Item G2 is our budget and list of proposed changes, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Shiver.
Thank you, Mayor. At your chairs, I distributed a packet of information that includes the list of changes that we typically do each year from the time period that the budget is actually, the proposed budget is completed and presented to council. There typically are a number of things that are sort of cleanup items, and you can see on there the examples of some of those things. The salary adjustments for the appointed officials. There are also some changes we made after the document was completed. For example, the public improvement GO bonds, where we paid off some debt, and that needs to be incorporated into the budget. And you can see the remaining items on that list. Also included in the packet for your information here this evening was included in the original budget, proposed budget, the summary of operating and the capital budgets, also an operating budget ordinance, the general capital budget ordinance, and the utility capital budget ordinance. Council has conducted preliminary work sessions going back a number of months prior to the preparation of the budget. budget was presented. And council held a work session on that and also 2 public hearings. And so the time is before us this evening to consider its adoption there.
Okay. I know that Ms. Bush had expressed the desire to make some comments.
Oh, I'm on such a roll today, too. So, yeah, before we take action, I do want to say that I will support the budget as is, but you all are aware that I have a number of concerns, and I wanted to share one lesson learned that I've found with this process. You already know my technology bent, but what I probably haven't done a good job of sharing is my belief and experience that a focus on investment technology is an investment in our commitment to our citizens. I think we heard many times through the public hearing from not just our technology task force members, but the average citizen who came here, Mr. Stan Levine today, who is, I guess I'll call him a lurker in the most kind way, watching what we're doing with technology. Because what we've seen is that more and more of our constituents are using technology to communicate us. We've seen it in our email. They tweet, they Facebook post. In fact, we received more comments for this budget period via social media than we received the 2 prior years combined, right? So our investment in using technology helps us access our citizens. They want more access to information. As Mr. Levine says, they want, and I would say even need, a better website. I think we've all struggled, and we've all meant, I've heard each one of you say it at one particular time or another, whether it was at the retreat or in your comments at this table, that our website is difficult to find the information that we need. And it's time for us to put our money where our mouth is, where our collective mouths are, to invest in the solution. So although I will vote for this budget, and I hope all of us will, as we move forward and budgets allow, I hope that you will join me in putting a priority on our investment in our citizens and our communication methodologies with them, and consider an upcoming appropriation as funds come available.
Okay. Other comments? Ms. Adcock.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, this is the 6th budget that I've been a part of, and I have to say, while it gets more understandable each year, it's gotten harder each year because of the recession. And so I have mixed feelings about this budget. I'm excited about some parts of it. I'm appreciative, but I'm also disappointed. I'm excited because we have wanted for a long time to add a specialized recreation staff, and we get that in this budget. After a study that was done probably in 2008, or was at least completed in 2008. We've waited a long time for this, 5 years. Our citizens have waited. I'm very excited about that. I'm very appreciative of Cary voters who supported last fall's bond referendum so that we had the money to make capital improvements in the areas of roads, parks, and public safety. You know, our citizens really come through, and they did it for us in this budget. And the only thing I'm disappointed about is the things that we just can't fund. Ms. Bush certainly mentioned one of them. Because of our commitment and actually our legal requirement to pass a balanced budget, 3 things come to mind: that we can increase staffing in certain town departments to more appropriate levels. I think about as the recession is lessening, the great news about that is the recession is lessening, and the bad news is that we have an impact on staffing like permits and inspections in places like that where they're feeling the pinch. I wish we could have increased staffing at the levels that some of the department directors had wanted. I wish that we could fund more sidewalk construction and greenway connections, because this is what our citizens value a lot, and really has a lot to do with both the reputation of our town and our fit community status, but also trying to get people out there using these. And the other, of course, is implementation of the Technology Task Force recommendations. You know, I'm disappointed we couldn't do that. I share that with you, Ms. Bush. But I have to say, I believe that this is a good budget. I want to congratulate and thank Mr. Shiver and our budget department staff and our department directors for their hard work and thoughtfulness and dedication to producing this budget. And I'm going to vote for it.
Thank you. Other comments? Mr. Yerha.
Again, I support the budget wholeheartedly, but it's not without regret also. I guess my regrets some are similar to yours, especially the staffing recommendations that were made that we cannot fulfill. I regret that we've had so many citizen suggested ideas for this budget that we took and we listened to, and it looks like we totally ignored. But we didn't ignore them. We looked at them, we analyzed them, and so many of them are just not included. I regret that we have hundreds of millions of dollars of road and transportation projects on the not included list. That just boggled my mind. Prior to this, before joining the council, I always looked at the budget, but I never paid a lot of attention to the not included section. I can't believe there's so much in that not included section. I regret that, and every year, that we cannot fill our requests for our full requests of the charitable nonprofit institutions that come to us. They do so much for Cary, and some of them, I guess, got what they asked for, but very, very few. And I know we have a formula for that, and that's what we have to use. But especially in these economic times, these nonprofit organizations are really hurting. So I regret that there's not more money to be spent there. And I urge our citizens to look at those wonderful nonprofits in Cary and to maybe not only spend your money, but spend your time volunteering for them. It's what makes Cary, Cary. And then the technology task force, I guess, is the last thing. But I think that's gotten enough attention and enough airtime that it's not something that's going to be thrown under the rug forever and ever. We are having a mini retreat in September for the first time ever, I understand, so that the council has an early voice in setting budget priorities. The staff works on this budget year-round. I mean, it's remarkable. But the council usually gets involved much later in the process. But in September, we're going to have a mini retreat that will try and set priorities. And I know Technology Task Force is going to be sitting there, and I know there's going to be a lot of support for that. So I do regret that it's not here, but I don't think it's forgotten. I am very thrilled with this budget that it does not include any tax increase other than what the voters wholeheartedly approved last fall in the bond issue. There's a tax increase, but that was expected. And it's amazing in these economic times that that's all we had to do. And I'm also very happy that this budget in no way jeopardizes any of our AAA ratings that we have. As you know, it's very tempting for us to dig into some of those funds and reserves which contribute to that AAA rating, but our staff strongly recommended against it, and they did the right thing. So I'm very happy with this. I think the staff has done an amazing job with this budget. Again, not without regrets, but I think we all have some. But I strongly support it.
Thank you, Mr. Yerha. Other comments?
I'll just echo some of the thanks to staff, especially budget and finance and just everything everybody's done to help us through this. It's a tough year. It's been a tough year for a number of years now. You guys continue to focus on our highest needs and priorities in town, and you help make our job a lot easier. And I don't know, I've never had a budget I've been 100% satisfied with, but what is it that 85% is good, and so I just want to thank everybody for all their efforts on it. I really do.
Well, it seems like we're going down the line.
Yeah, there's only 3 of us left. Anything hasn't been said?
99%
No,
has been said.
I think it's been said. Gale, you mentioned it was the toughest budget. To put that into
Your context, yeah.
For me, it's been the toughest budget. And I think that's, all the things have been said, so I'm not going to repeat them. The one thing I think we can reflect on, Ed, you hit on it a little bit, where we have so much in the to-do list. And we also have a lot of things that we do that have a pressing need today, and we also have things that are integral as part of our strategic vision for the future. And in today's world of instant communication, which sometimes translates to instant misinformation, I think the burden becomes even greater that there's this just natural tendency when there's so much on the plate, you can't do it all, that human nature starts coming in and saying, well, you spent this on this, and you didn't spend it here, and how could you do something that stupid there when you have this great need here? And I think communication becomes even critical of some of those strategic investments that we're dealing with, that Cary has done throughout its history that has made it a great place for people to want to live, work, and play. So we had a couple of those things this past year, some of those investments downtown and so forth. But we've made those investments throughout town years before, and the proof will be in the future as we get that return on that investment. But that's just the nature of the beast. You know, you never say never, you never say always. It's difficult. I can't believe I'm voting for a tax increase, but at the same time, as Ed said, this was for very specific items on the capital side, not the operational side. And it's something that we put to the voters. We didn't do it in a sneaky way. We didn't do it in an off year where only 9% vote that have a special interest. We threw it out there in the most public, the biggest election in the history around here, and the voters came out and we made it quite clear what we were going to do with that vote if it was approved, and we got that message. And I think that's an important thing to do. You look at a lot of tactics with a lot of communities. They look at ways to kind of sneak it in. We don't do that. And I think that's something we can take a lot of pride in this year on how we did that and how we move forward. So as Don said, it ain't perfect. There's a lot of things I'd like to see. I think, Lori, you've heard me express that support for what you're talking about, because I truly believe there's efficiencies that can be gained. And the only caution I have with technology is it doesn't always replace people. Today I had the pleasure of being on the phone and waiting for the VA over an hour, waiting for a medical company for over 40 minutes. All of this, you know, with this technology that says, you know, we're here to help you and we want to make you happy, but please hold for the next available teller. I don't want to see Cary get to that point that we're using technology and getting rid of that human interface. Our citizens are the #1 reason we're here, and they've got to always feel that they can come to this town and be approachable and get timely responses to their needs. Okay. Ms. Roberts?
All right, well, what great comments have already been said. I really appreciate everyone's remarks, because I think this is a budget that reflects our attempt to continue to maintain a high-quality community, but we've also have a lot of regrets over things that we cannot achieve. And, you know, in addition to thanking our staff for helping us continue once again in another year of this economic recovery, to maintain the assets that we have and put that as our highest priority. So thank you to our staff for their diligence, because a lot of communities are really struggling right now to do what Cary has been able to achieve, and that is to give the sense to our citizens that the economy is not falling down around us. We continue to maintain our medians and our streets and our water system and everything to a high standard, and I think that's a real accomplishment during this tough economic time. And I want to thank the citizens too who have been so patient, particularly those who are in high growth areas, because, you know, historically this has happened again and again in Cary, where people move out to the frontier of their community, and it's not long after they move out there that the roads are built, the parks come in, they're developed, the schools follow. But during this economic recession that we've been going through, there have been hundreds of homes, thousands of homes that are in our high growth area that have preceded all of the infrastructure that they would like to see. And, you know, obviously we've run the essentials, the water, the sewer, but there's a lot of roads that need attention over time. Parkland that's been acquired, thankfully, through our open space program, but are waiting to be developed. And I know citizens have been very patient throughout this time, and we really hope that our budget will be able to recover over time so that we can get back to providing the amenities that our citizens have become accustomed to. But in the meanwhile, all of the amenities that we do have on the ground, we are maintaining to its higher standard, and I think that's a real accomplishment. And I'm very, you know, aside from all the regrets, I'm very happy with this budget, given what we had to work with.
Yeah, I think
We did a great job with the budget. I think we're still going to have the lowest tax rate in Wake County and the highest quality of life. And for our staff to be able to do that year after year after year, that takes some incredible things. We have 8.3 staff members per 1,000 residents. Most municipalities our size have 11. So we're very efficient. We operate like a tight ship, thanks to Mr. Shiver and his staff. And then next week, the staff starts all over again as we start a new year. Hopefully, though, this year, rather than staff going from the department level on up with their recommendations, they pare it all down, they massage it, then they present it to council, and then we say, well, we don't like this or we like this. Hopefully, early on, we're going to give some input that will help shape that earlier and make your jobs a little bit easier. That's our intent. I hope it doesn't backfire, so it's an experiment. We don't know what's going to happen.
It could just be us meddling.
That's right. But your work is truly appreciated, and it's very obvious, all the input that staff has had in these budgets. The work sessions are small. I've been in budgets where we had 6, 7, 8 work sessions, and we battled forever to get to where we are. But we usually, the last few years, we've had 1 or 2, and we're done. And that's a tribute to the staff and the excellent work that Mr. Shiver does with his staff, and it's greatly appreciated. So thank you very much, and I would entertain a motion.
I'm ready for a motion. Move approval of, move adoption of the fiscal year 2014 budget, including the list of proposed changes.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Further discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Again, thanks to the staff, and thank you, Mr. Shiver.
Thank you, Mayor.
If there's no other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There's a
Second.
motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we adjourn. Thank you.
No close.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.